Hey everybody, surprise live podcast. It's live. That means people can ask questions right now, live, except not now. If you're watching this on YouTube, not live, or SoundCloud or something, then it's not live anymore. You missed it, which is just understandable. I didn't announce it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, actually.
I can't believe none of you are.
probably-
No one's just waiting for us to go live randomly. Come on, guys, what's going on here?
I mean,
Yeah,
I was.
It's not even the time of day I normally go live, but probably get more viewership in the middle of the day on a Sunday than my usual time, where it's like, hey, we stream at the end of the evening Pacific time when everyone else's evening ended hours ago.
Or he's asleep.
That always goes. Everyone's like, why the fuck are you streaming at 4 a.m.? And I'm like, you might be shocked to find that it's not 4 a.m. for me.
It's always 4 a.m. somewhere.
I don't want to tell you. Max Damage asks, if you had the ability, there's emails, if you had the ability to run or be in a D&D or D&D-like game, what would be your ideal game look like? What are some things that you'd like to do in a D&D game that you haven't been able to do yet? Any D&D related regrets?
I got an answer.
What's that?
I'm trying to set up a I actually hopefully will do this. So every once in a while when you're playing a D&D game over the internet, the DM will just bring out a picture. Either it's a tavern, like a first person picture, like not the top down one. Either it's a tavern or like a dungeon, just to exemplify where you are. If you linger on that, it can be really cool because you start, you're role playing and you're discussing what's going to happen and all that, and you're paying attention to the details of the picture, which can be really interesting. I have never DM'd, so that's like, I'm sorry, first off. But second, when I do DM, I want to do a session that is based all on pictures. So what I'm trying to come up with is with a plot that is concise enough, or like a world specifically, or a premise that is concise enough and solid enough that it won't get out of hand for the pictures, that I won't get just overwhelmed. But also I want to have like a good amount of the pictures already selected, so have interesting things to show the players. And I'm thinking like something like typical, you find yourself in a dungeon, get out of the dungeon, Legend of Grimrock style thing, which allows you to just have anything that you want inside the dungeon, and also everything that you want inside the dungeon, because the players, I go left, guess what, it's the same thing going left or right, that kind of fake options. If I have something that I really want people to see,
make a big branching dungeon, but every step of the way it's actually just a straight line with pretend choices.
Because I got the pictures, I'm not gonna throw them away. I spend time looking at them.
Stanley took the door on the left.
So yeah, basically I think that it can be really interesting to do a role-playing session where you're looking at a picture where you're role-playing rather than just sort of imagining it in your head or the map or something like that, because it could be cool. So that's what I want to do in a role-playing game.
I definitely wanted to do like a disempowering thing, like a fucking, like a community, like a company town, or like Pathologic or something, where it's just everything's going wrong all the time. You don't get the constant RPG hand job of like, I'm so powerful and everything works out for me. It's like you have 2 coins to rub together and you can't find food and like kind of shit like that. Like it's just this massive struggle for the party to get anything down, and it feels like the world's like against them specifically.
So what happened to me when we played with Effie as the DM?
I mean, Effie could be an antagonistic force at times, but also you like just chose things.
You burnt a house down. Like, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? You can't just like do that. That's a crime. Like, you can't just.
It isn't.
Yes, you literally got killed for that crime. That's why you died. Like,
technically, I got killed because I didn't.
Like, I was definitely
because.
Like it led eventually to the funny fucking old lady illusion and everything, but I was definitely frustrated with Effie when he was like stacking exhaustion points on me, and fucking police were just coming out of the pores of the city at me from every direction. I'm like, what is this, like, do I have 4-star wanted level? I'm just a dude that ran away from medieval police, and I run really fast. Like, I should have gotten away at some point.
I like the idea that I know it. Go for it.
I was gonna say, I know it's a staple in D&D, but there's no such thing as medieval police. Like, sure,
know.
there's guards in D&D,
Guards
but like
or whatever. Yeah.
police
I just
is yeah.
Like they
I
don't
just
have
like
like
yeah.
a fucking network. Like once I break line of sight, they're kind of fucked. Like
Yeah,
they
that's
should
what I
be
was
coming
gonna say.
out of random buildings like they're spawning in GTA.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I love
getting
that it was
cyberpunked.
GTA. Well, that's the I guess there is this level of flexibility with DMing that I always don't want to be a part of, because there is like, you do sometimes like have a gun pointing to your head and it's like, all right, you're gonna create a whole new world, a whole new story right now because I decided to not do this, and you're like, oh fuck.
Oh no, that's
Okay.
terrifying. Yeah.
It's like, like, yeah, what do you do what do you do when one of your players is like, I'm gonna steal a thing and I'll run to the left, and someone's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is gonna like throw a huge wrench into the story. Like there is
Like that's my big D&D regret, is that like half the time I even have to try to say something in character that isn't just like a snappy like comeback at someone that I'm like arguing with or something. Any time I have to like try to improvise dialogue, I just kind of freeze and I'm just like, oh fuck, what would I say in this situation? And then so I'm like,
Oh, really?
running a universe? What the fuck? How the fuck do you DM? And then it's like, I wrote a 700 page novel about what might happen, like, which obviously you can't do, but also you kind of have to do in some ways, because you have to have some idea of what could happen and what the setting is like and where it's all hopefully going and where you're trying to make the like you're trying to have narrative arcs and shit like that, presumably, which hopefully the players will sometimes create themselves too. But it's like, how the fuck do you just react to something just fucking happening and you're like, yeah, we want to run a bagel shop for the next 7 years, and you're like,
I think what's important is being flexible but in depth. So like you want to have characters and you want to have stories with those characters, but you shouldn't have rigidity in how that story goes, right? Like if they want to run a bagel shop, that's fine. An important character can be a customer at a bagel shop. There is no like law that says they don't eat bagels. Like you can have a person come in and be like, oh man, these are some really good bagels. Have you guys heard about this like crazy dragon going around? And it's like, you can do that. That's natural. It's not like not like a bagel shop is run like a Sims game where it's like no one says anything. They just come and get their bagel and go home. Like you can, you can still have natural instances and you can still keep a story going. Even if someone says like, no, actually I don't care about dragons. You can go like, oh, okay, that's fine. Like, because the dragon can still get killed not by you, but that can still have consequences in the world. Or the dragon can come in through the window. Or that, yeah, you could be spiteful and just say like, well, now the dragon has a thing about bagels and he's coming for your bagel shop. But like,
bagel dragon.
Yeah, it's a bagel dragon now. But like, that's what I'm saying is like, it does. You don't necessarily have to have the players go from point A to point B in like a perfect linear fashion. You can just have, hey, there's a character at point A that wants you to go to point B. And how you get there is kind of just fun. You just do whatever it takes to get there. But there may be like
the struggle is having the talent to improvise and the confidence to think you can.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like, it's not easy. It's just like, that's kind of that's the mentality you have to go into, is you don't want to be rigid, but you need to be like very confident in your flexibility.
There's that pressure of, hey, you're personally responsible for the enjoyment of like 2 to 4 of your friends. And I've seen that pressure happen in real time, because I've seen like somebody did their first ever DM session or campaign at Marty's house, and like they were trying to figure out what to do, and like they would make mistakes here and there, and we had one player in particular that was like a long time try hard asshole nerd that would like actually stir shit up and get angry when he made mistakes, and it's like, what the fuck? Like there was genuine like storm out of the room moments, and it's like, what the actual fuck, bro? And there was one point where we decided that we had just gotten this, I don't even know what campaign this was, although it is the original incarnation of Thunder in the Morning, except he was a tiefling but with the same character. It was just the same character with a different and same backstory but a different race, and same like thief goings on with his choices. After retrieving this egg for this dude and getting it to him, was this like water deep or something? I don't know. We decided afterwards, we're like, we're gonna steal that dragon egg. And so I'm like, all right, see you guys next week. I'll think about this, and then we never met again.
Oh
No
no.
dragon for you. No dragon
Because
egg for
he
you.
was gonna like the idea was that we need to stop so he could like plan out what the fuck the heist was gonna be like.
Yeah.
Ironically, yeah, like a dragon heist, but not in the dragon heist campaign. And yeah, we never met up again.
Damn.
I don't think that went over so great. Him having to figure out that, in part because I don't think that was in the book because we were going off of a module, and so he was like, "Oh, fuck."
Yeah. And that's, yeah, obviously time is a big factor too. Like the more time you dedicate to doing, it's like a skill. The more time you dedicate to doing it, the better you'll get at overcoming stuff like that. It's just, it's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I think my only regret is not being able to follow through with my character. I think I spent I spent too much time thinking about my character and not enough time being my character. So I regret not having more time to be my character.
Yeah, there's a chance that we might be able to bring that campaign back someday, but I definitely had the thought of like, hey, let's see who we can rally back, and I was like, I think we can get Marty, like he's interested in coming back and so on. Then I realized like, oh shit, there's like a fucking like zero overlap between at least before you moved. I don't know about now, but at the time there was zero overlap between your availability and everybody else's availability. I'm like, oh, we're either doing this like either with Andrew or with everyone but Andrew. because we lost one player to the pandemic. No, they didn't die. Don't worry, audience. They just never came back. And that was like why it was on pause. And it's like at this point, it's like it's been long enough that's like we're justified to just moving on and just getting rid of one character. But then I'm like, if I don't think we can get Andrew, so that's like basically just me, Effie, and Marty and Colonel. Like that, we're down to a lot less people all of a sudden.
Yeah, the story stops making as much sense.
I think I could do it if it wasn't. I think I could do it if it wasn't like every weekend. If there was just like one. One. Like
I love all
once a
the
month
memories it gives. It's one of those games where the memories overshadow the reality of it being several hours of being kind of bored in the moment. But then like cool enough stuff happens that's what you remember instead of the rest of the session.
Yeah, that's the D&D. That's why I think that's why it works better at tabletop, because you're like munching on something.
Yeah, you're hanging out. And also 5 is simplified and sped up in so many ways, and it still kind of suffers from that to some extent, but it's worth it because then you get to do that bullshit we get up to.
There's other systems. I get the impression that the fact that it can be boring, like not, obviously some DMs will not make it boring and others will. It's not I'm not throwing shade on Effie. He's great. I love his DMing style, honestly. But there, it's down to the DM, but the game itself, it just lends itself to that. So to what you're saying, like especially with bigger parties, there's going to be downtime, and I wonder if that's the reason why so often tabletop role-playing games just have so much combat all the time. It's just like that's what they're for, right?
I'm so happy to go an entire session without even having combat. I'm not even interested in combat where I do damage. When combat happens, I'm only interested in what weird spells I can do stuff with that fuck up like the context of the fight, basically, and get away with something.
I think the most interesting thing is always like, I want to go that way because of this choice, or I want to try this skill because of this idea. And, that can tie into combat as well. But it's just the fighting is, oh, now they're half health. Oh, exciting, instead of 3/4. Oh.
Yeah. All right, we got to get to questions. They're coming in. If you had a year with no games coming out, what would be your... I didn't read this right. If you had a year where no new games came out, what would be the games you play to catch up on your backlog? Did any
games come out this year?
New games are always... There's more new games coming out than there are people on the planet.
There's endless video games, especially with indie.
Yeah, I obviously there's only so much you can catch up on. I think if I could, I don't know. What do I have? What's like sitting around? I guess that's the problem. I don't really have a backlog in my head of games. I'm like, damn, I really wish I could, because I kind of just
you get that spreadsheet, but you don't like games.
I have a
Yeah,
spreadsheet
so it's like
with some. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not too worried because like I just play games and then I either hate them or I don't hate them as much,
Yeah.
and then I just move on with life.
As
And so
much.
like yeah, I don't have to think about it too much.
I don't like it's like there's some multiplayer stuff I'm playing that's new, like Wilder Myth and Escape Simulator. But aside from that, like my entire schedule is actually currently games that aren't brand new, except for the Patreon chosen game Inscription. The most recent one is Resident Evil, which is like 8 months old. But next I'm playing a classic game, like that's just built into my schedule. But like I'm usually kind of already behind by a fair bit anyway, and always working on backlog. But I have a fucking infinity spreadsheet of literally like you're like, what games did you get to? I'm like, I'm already trying to forever all the time. Help. There's links to it in various places, but it's just will never run out of games. If you stop making games right now, I will play games on my spreadsheet for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I don't have that kind of spreadsheet like yours, where it's really like a bounty of so many games. I only have a few, and honestly, it's like it's games that I've played that I want to play again more than games that I haven't played. But
that's the thing too. Yeah, like doing alternate runs of various games or just wanting to come back to something is like such a struggle. In addition to that,
but this year possibly for the last 2 years, it depends. I've been going over the games that I missed from BioWare. So I replayed Mass Effect 1, and I'm now playing Mass Effect 2, but I played Dragon Age 1 and 2, and those were fun. Those were really good games. I think I prefer the second game, and I'm looking forward to playing. I'm looking forward to playing.
Join me on the dark side.
Wait, do you like the second game better as well? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is that the one with the
playing
dwarf?
I mean, I like the Dragon Age games. Yeah, it's the one with Varric. I like the Dragon Age games in general, but I think 2 is probably my favorite, among other things, because it's like instead of being like save the world again, it's like here's a town and like the eras of its struggles and shit, and that's like interesting.
I wish I got a lot of people telling me that they thought that the second game didn't really have much of a plot, and I can see where that could I can see that. I can see
it has like 3 plots.
Yeah, but they're not really connected. I wish they could just throw in
They're connected by your family.
I know,
being stuck there in that town and living through it.
And they are. But the thing is, like, the 3 plots, without much spoilers, is basically getting into town and setting yourself up. And the middle part of the game is all about
the Kunari.
Oh yeah, the Kunari. Oh yeah, the Kunari could have been they could have been the sort of the melding of the 3 plots, like, because they don't really take play, or they're not really a big part in the beginning or the end of the game. And I wish they were, because it would make a little bit more sense. Or maybe it's because of my choices. I don't know. But it's not that it doesn't.
I just like getting really granular and character driven instead of being like, and then all of the kingdoms join together to fight the zombie dragon.
I think the original Dragon Age was character driven as well. But just in a more...
It's what's good about BioWare games. It's just that the plot is always like the same save the world plot over and over again.
And I'm also playing Dishonored 2, which finally got around. It's so good, Dishonored 2, my god. At least the beginning, it's really strong start.
Yeah. I still need to get around to Death of the Outsider.
I'll play that after. So I'm definitely going over some games that I left behind. BioWare, I sort of fell out of BioWare. Honestly, I think the last game that I played from BioWare was Mass Effect 2, which I didn't prefer to Mass Effect 1. I prefer
Mass Effect 1's the best Mass Effect.
Yeah, I didn't play the third, but I will.
They all get linearly worse until they get expensially worse.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? 3 is the best one of the series.
As for why I'm not just sitting here rattling off names, when I look at my spreadsheet for indie games, I just scroll down and the final entry is on row 154, and my final game on puzzle games is on row 222.
That's even, oh my god.
There's also 64 games in my classic game slot, and that's not even counting like I have a VR slot, a modern AAA and AA slot, RPG slot, just a list of Souls-likes, games that are good for playing with Stephanie, good for playing with Bird, good for playing with Andrew, horror games. There's so many columns. Some of them have repeat entries because, you know, some of them are indie games that are good for playing with Stephanie, so they're in both. But fuck,
Indie puzzle games, VR.
Can't even start listing things. Yeah, they're indie puzzle games that are also asymmetrical multiplayer with Stephanie.
Yeah.
Just split every fucking Venn diagram into one thing until it's a flower.
At some point, your Excel spreadsheet is just pointless. You just press a button and it randomly picks a game for you, and you're like, "Thanks, all right." Like,
yeah.
That's, I don't know. What do you? At what point? Like, what do you? How many layers? You know, how many rows are you going to keep making of games? Right? Like, once you breach like 1,000, you just start like.
Oh,
all right,
there's definitely. I definitely consider like going through and just deleting a bunch of them.
Yeah, like, well, but
the thing about it is that it's less about having a to-do list to like genuinely conquer, and more it's just like a place where I paste the names of every game that I see somewhere, and I'm like, that looks worth remembering. Maybe I get around to that someday. And then I try to have a highlighted area at the top of the list of like my highest priority ones, but then that one also bloats to like 50 games, and I'm like, okay, how do I cull this one down? It's like deleting games from the list is almost pointless because it's just like a way of essentially parsing the infinite like Lovecraftian expanse that is like Steam's list of games into like the ones that actually caught my attention at some point.
It sounds like the sort of feature, or not feature, but sort of tool that things like Steam could help people out with. Just add it to my list, add it to my backlog,
Yeah.
Steam backlog. They should capitalize on the fact that people don't play games they buy.
Turn it into a culture.
Yeah, turn it. I think Steam is such a trash tool for finding games. Honestly,
you start doing a Let's Play channel, and if you have any kind of broad interest in games and aren't somebody that like struggles to find anything they like you immediately have an exponential problem. Like my original art commission for my channel, for the banner, featured Miasmata in the email as part of like the mood of like stuff I was kind of going towards. That guy, that was probably not a very well done email when I look back at it, because I'm like, this guy's just doing really quick, like really cheap banners. He mostly just ignored everything and just drew a bonfire way back then and just moved on. And it was like, hey, he got to me like in a day. And I'm like, all right. And I didn't, and like always, I didn't complain because I've never complained about an art commission. But like I mentioned Miasmata in that, and I'm like, I still haven't played Miasmata. And at one point I was like, I literally like envisioned myself as being like some kind of like survival game like player, more so than even an RPG player at the time. I thought I was going to be doing that kind of stuff more, and so like that was a thing that came up in my mind. And like it's been like a decade now, and I still haven't covered Miasmata. Like the backlog immediately starts growing the moment you even start paying attention, and you never conquer it.
I just let Steam recommend me games. So it tells me like what you should play, and I just click on whatever's at the very end of that list, because all of the stuff in the beginning is garbage. And it works out so poorly. Every game it's recommended me has been bad. So confident.
Womp.
Next time.
Maybe you should.
I had to open the door for my cat because he was throwing things outside.
I don't know. I feel like a year isn't enough. No matter if you want to catch them on a backlog, no matter what, I can't imagine someone that has like a year worth of games, especially unless you're playing something that like takes a year to beat. Like I don't know, whatever.
There are
like
single franchises that where it would take me taking a year off from doing anything else to get through.
That's true. I just meant like
I'm gonna spend
is like
this
3 years.
It's like I'm gonna spend this year playing Resident Evil, or this year playing Metal Gear, or this year finishing the second half of the Yakuza games.
If you beat every Yakuza game,
Resident Evil is not fast. There's so many Resident Evils.
Oh right, because it's not just the main entries. There's
Yeah,
Code
like,
Veronica and Origins and Origins 2 and
yeah,
Origins
and Code Veronica is
0.
a main entry. It's just not numbered.
Could you beat every Monster Hunter in a year?
Yeah, I
think
still have
so.
the. I still
think
ha-
it's possible.
Jesus Christ. I mean, define beat to some extent, but also like, oh God, what a void.
Kill every dragon.
Yeah, I still
once.
I still have the original Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil 2 and 3. The original I have was my list says Resident Evil Survivor, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Resident Evil Gaiden, Resident Evil Survivor 2, Code Veronica, Resident Evil Remake, but as Chris instead of Jill because I only played Jill the first time around. Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil Dead Aim, Outbreak, Outbreak 2, 4, Umbrella Chronicles, 4 VR, Dark Side Chronicles, Mercenaries 3D, Operation Raccoon City, Umbrella Corps. Because those last few are pretty skippable. Those are the stupid multiplayer ones. But there's a lot of fucking Resident Evil. I've played like 10. And I'm still like, there's so many. We're down to the more questionable ones. Yeah. But I definitely still need to play like Outbreak 1 and 2 and 4 and Code Veronica. Because those are like the main games. And like, there is the question of like, the original Resident Evils were so different. Shouldn't you play those also instead of in addition to the remakes? And
that goes in the classic category.
The original Resident Evils are the only Resident Evils for me.
So I was like, when are you going to finish all the franchises that you've covered? And it's like, well, Patreon had me play Dead Space, so I guess now I got to play Dead Space Extraction, Dead Space 2, Dead Space 3.
No, there's only 3, right? Oh, no, wait, you mentioned others.
Dead Space Extraction is a Wii U light gun game that is apparently like shockingly good and very canon, and also like it's very much significant to the narrative of Dead Space as a whole.
Was that on the back of the box?
Very canon.
If you do not play this, the story is just incomplete.
Yeah, or it's like
for people who don't know what canon means, which some people might not. It sounds like
very disappointed.
Machine gun, very bazooka.
Like I don't even remember the last time I even updated my Souls likes list, so it's so out of date now. But it still has Dark Mouse, Immortal Planet, Immortal Unchanged, Sinner, Sacrifice or Redemption, Blasphemous, Code Vein, Jedi Fallen Order, Neo 2, Vigil,
you played
The
so
Longest
many of those
Night.
Already.
No, I did Let's Tries of like 2 of them. And then of course like the fucking Cinders, Daughters of Ash, and Prepare to Die Again mods for Dark Souls, and I think another one's coming out that's on my calendar somewhere. Just like, oh fuck. Help.
There is no end to video games.
I could spend the whole year just playing mods of one game.
What?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just doing all these fucking like mods of Dark Souls where they keep making new campaigns in the first game.
Modding is such a new breath of life to any game whatsoever that people who get into
Fallout
modding
California and Fallout Colorado or something, Nevada.
Yeah. Don't do Fallout Nevada.
Yeah, it's like there's the fan 2D Fallout, or the fan isometric Fallout, and the fan Bethesda Fallout.
Mm-hmm. So it's Project California, I believe, is the for Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout Nevada is a mod. It's not a mod. It's like a redesign of Fallout 2, but it's really not well written, I feel, and it's also not very well designed. It's this sort of RPG where, like, you get a mission to be like, try to stop these bikers from destroying our town, and then you're like, okay, what do I do next? And then the writers thought of something for you to do next, but they got you no clue, so you're supposed to stumble onto stuff. Like, there's even options for you to do different things, but you just need to stumble into those options, which means that when you do stumble into an option, you're like, oh, this is the thing I can do, because you don't know the other one. So
that
yeah, 4D it's not very good.
Gamer brain. Those moments where you just like, you think you're logically concluding what the evidence is given to you, but then all the comments are losing their shit because you didn't see the things that were never presented to you. What is it?
Yeah. No, the comments are mostly people being like, how did you find this? I can't find it. Or where is this? I have no idea. Because it's everybody having the same issue. And of course, don't look at Let's Plays for walkthroughs. It is bad.
Yeah, no. There's so many fucking walkthrough comments. I'm like, not a walkthrough. Not what the title of the video is. Hello? All right. Would you consider doing other tabletop systems than D&D, like a one-shot Myth of Cthulhu session? I don't know if I'd want to do put in the effort to learn a system for a one-shot, but I've already done Pathologic, Pathfinder, which is not D&D, or Starfinder,
They're
played
the same
both,
sort
I
of
think.
systems. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've also what is it? I've also played Shadowrun and Vampire, which Shadowrun I did not have a good time with. We had a very boisterous and showy, experienced dungeon master, I guess, that loved to weave a big tale and so on. But I'm sure he was trying, but boy, did I not understand what was happening or what I was doing. I'd never heard of the Shadowrun universe at the time, so it was all new to me at the time. And we had the whole set where it's like, you're the decker and you're the femme fatale and you're the fixer or whatever. So it's like,
Femme
oh,
fatale
cool.
it's not a class. You can't.
Yeah, I don't.
Me.
That's all I remember about that character. So I'm just saying, like,
yeah, I know.
it's like I was a fixer, and I'm like, that a fixer is a terrible job to have about it for a universe that you don't understand. So my job was to send people on missions and know things basically, and I'm like, I don't fucking know what's happening. So I would pretty much just like stare at the DM like and then he would like tell me what I knew, and I'm like, I'm not doing anything. This was messy. But
yeah, Shadowrun is very much like that because it's so focused on combat. It's also a terrible system for new players because the premise is that you're a gritty, down to earth person who does outlaw things. So
it was our D&D dungeon master for 3.5 had brought in his friend that he clearly played with and so on, and that guy clearly had like a plan for what the night's narrative was, and we just kind of like got to sit through it, I guess. But Vampire was fun. I played as it's like the gangrel or whatever. I think it's the same people that I played as in the video game, and it was specifically I took flaws that made it almost impossible to actually to pass to pass, but there's a word for it, to maintain the masquerade.
Yeah.
So I pretty much had to hide and use I basically turned a gangrel into a Nosferatu, but with the like fucked up transformation traits.
Did you get those marks that show up on your forehead when you're low on blood?
No, I think it was just animalistic traits. It was just a like too far gone situation. But that meant I got to take a bunch of positives, because that's a fun way to build characters is have flaws that give you points that you can then spend on boons, and you get to make like a really interesting character that way. But that was the one where like I was like interested in where things were gonna go, but we were playing with two people in the party that were just murder hobos, and they just did not comprehend what a tabletop game was somehow. Even though I think we'd played D&D before, but they were just like, they were so bizarrely like I guess D&D was consistently framed like a dungeon enough that they weren't confused, that they like fit into it somehow. But these fuckers, like, they set us down at night in a suburban neighborhood, and they just started going from house to house and slaughtering everyone inside. Like, people would come running out on fire and stuff, and the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm just sitting on the lawn, just sort of watching and not taking part, and they're like acting like I'm the weird one, and like and seemingly not in character but out of character. Like, what are you doing? We're playing a game. And I'm like, this isn't a dungeon. These are just random houses. What the fuck are these people doing? I have zero specific preference for D&D, except for the fact that, you know, it's like it's like when you've learned how to ski and then someone's like, try snowboarding. I'm like, but I know how to ski. But other than that, it's just the same improv stuff, and hopefully the game enables you getting up to shit.
The problem with D&D is that it's less like learning how to snowboard after you learned how to ski, but more you're sitting down and somebody says, "Get up and walk," and you're like, "But I'm sitting down." That's D&D is sitting down, because it's very limiting, unfortunately. That's fired.
Show up and play a game.
Yeah.
I don't think too much about it. I get that I get the point is that you're role playing, but I think I have an easier time role playing in a D&D setting than I have role playing in a video game. I can't role play in video games. Like
in a tabletop setting.
Yeah, like in a tabletop setting,
to D&D's setting.
Well, like, so a tabletop or a D&D style, I can be a lot more immersive and role play with. But when I'm in a video game, my brain just doesn't understand non-combat. Like the idea is if I'm not fighting people, it must be a puzzle game. And if it's not a puzzle game, then why am I not fighting people? Like that's the whole that's like the two switches in
just
my brain.
other human beings talking to you. And they can actually respond to you like a not robot.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I think it's because like when you
I'm sorry, I only accept Paragon and Renegade.
Yeah, like when you talk to somebody in an RPG video game, they often come off very like killable. Like you kind of want them to go away if you can make them go away. Whereas like in D&D or tabletop, people come off more reasonable because it's like a real person talking to you. But like, yeah, when you like walk to an NPC and it's like, "Hello, sir, fuck off," and you're like, what? Fuck you! I'm gonna kill you right now. Like, like what is this shit? And then,
fuck me, no, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what the hell, no. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny hearing the idea of like someone doing it inversely. Of like, on tabletop, you just go around murdering everybody. It's like, what? Aren't they more real that way? Like, how are you doing this?
Yeah, it's also just
so weird.
It's so much more boring in tabletop.
Yeah, well, that too. Like, I imagine
it takes so much longer. Like, I remember one of those murder hobo people got to DM once, and they made the most theory crafted nightmare encounter where we fought some kind of like mimic chest that had like 7 tentacles that were all holding different weapons, and like literally every turn of combat took like an hour. Like just sitting there, we were sitting there at the geology at the computer lab of the geology department on campus, and like I was just marveling at how slow the combat was moving and how much time it was losing. It was like turns of Twilight Imperium without being Twilight Imperium. Like no fight in D&D deserves to take that long. It's either a straightforward fight where you hit numbers on each other and then somebody wins, or someone pulls off a really cool trick, which is preferable, and something interesting happens. I love my bag of tricks. It's always why I always want to play as like a druid or something.
It's like it's I guess in role playing in video games always requires you to make up your own attitude. Even the role-playest of role-playing games will computer role-playing games will always require you to have an attitude that isn't, "Oh, let's find out what happens when I choose this option," or what the developers thought this option was. And like, I think that's my perspective anyway, but I think, and I understand your perspective, Andrew, also because we have talked about it a few times already, but I think developers themselves sometimes think like you do. Like you mentioned, Keith, you mentioned the Paragon and the Renegade from Mass Effect. In Mass Effect 2, they have in the cutscenes, they have like a quick action button for Paragon and Renegade actions. And you're just given a prompt. It's just like left click, or I'm playing on PC, left click for Paragon or for Renegade, or right click for Renegade or whatever. And you don't know what is gonna happen. So in last time I played, I just punched a journalist. I came up to a journalist, being like, "Hey, what's up?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I guess I want to find out what's going on." And then a prompt shows up for.
She really does make you want to punch her.
Yes.
But I didn't choose that.
So awful.
I didn't choose that though.
I feel like that's one of it's just I feel like that's one of the most like popular Renegade options in the game.
But
like,
it should be given a
son
choice,
of a bitch.
though.
You're just gonna twist everything I fucking say, aren't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a very questionable choice to have those weird QTEs where you're like, I don't know what the QTE do though.
Yeah.
Every now and then it's a cool moment, like when you fucking like dodge this and you take somebody out in the middle of a fight scene, but otherwise you're like, I don't know what it does in this conversation.
It feels almost too mechanical. Like it really is like a pulling the curtain away, where it's like nothing you decide matters. What kind of playthrough are you doing? Are you doing the good playthrough or the bad playthrough? Which is like the opposite of role playing. You don't want to like play it's just like so rigid.
The very active playing video game RPG is just kind of the perpetual record scratch of like, it's almost an RPG, it's almost working, it's trying so hard, but it can't, it never can, it never will. It'll always just try to get closer until they give up, which is most of the time now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What was your favorite game when you were little that you thought was hard but loved it?
Just before we move on, sorry, Keith. Regarding that punching the journalist thing, I didn't take it quite as a what a cool moment kind of thing, because I talked to her right after talking to us in a situation where a cop was racially profiling I forget their name, but it's like Tally. Who's Tally? What's her race?
Quarian.
Quarian, yeah. So there was this cop racially profiling a Quarian, a cop who says in one of his lines, "This is like patrolling New York City. We need to make this street safe." And I'm like, good for calling me. Yes.
What?
Just where's your thin blue line badge? Where can I see your
Yeah.
Does
whatever
a
the
Quarian
skull
know
thing is?
what that means? Does a
No, the Quarian didn't say
like,
that. It was the cop.
Man,
It was
not
the
like
cop
New
saying that.
York.
And then
Yeah, no,
and
they
right
said
after,
about profiling the Quarian, and yeah, there is a thing here where it's like in character and in from the perspective of Shepard, and as a video game protagonist, you're like used to a particular worldview where you're kind of above scrutiny and you're the protagonist and all this shit. But in the context of Shepard being a space cop, it's really fucked up to punch one of the people that can even begin to hold you accountable, which basically nobody can.
yeah. So it makes total sense for the storyline, and also it's really being portrayed. I like that I chose the ending that I chose in the first game. It's basically a police state. Mass Effect 2 it starts with a police state, and it's portrayed legitimately well. Yes, it is like patrolling New York City. Yes, officer. Yes, it is. Anyway, we can move on to the next.
What a line.
There were others. There were others.
Even the most recent time I played those games was a few years back, where I don't think I even had the context for that line yet.
Yeah.
If
Like
I'm
amused about it, because I don't think, like, earnestly talking here among us, I don't think the writers wanted to make it sound any deep. They didn't have any depth to that. I think that was just a throwaway line that I think is like a relic of watching movies where there's a lot of propaganda in movies, and it like Spider-Man alone. Wait, wasn't it?
Well,
wasn't Mass Effect
cleaning the streets has kind of like always been the slogan of police in every major city.
Yeah,
They're like, we gotta keep these streets clean of people, otherwise they'll do crimes. Like,
yeah, like the what I'm saying is, like, people get the ideas that they do, and it's not, sometimes they write games without trying to say anything too deep. And I'm not saying that BioWare was trying to do a propaganda with Mass Effect 2, although they did it.
No, it's just the default way of interacting with police in fiction if you don't interrogate it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite game when you were little that you thought was hard but loved it?
Ooh.
So I guess your favorite hard game you liked as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably say like Animaniacs for the Super Nintendo. That was really hard. As a kid, that was a really fucking hard game. It's one of those types of platformers that have a lot of quick reaction time stuff. So you'd be like running down a hill and something will be in the way of you and you need to dodge it really quickly, but you're like a child. So your reaction time is that of like an inebriated adult. So like you just can't do anything. You're just an idiot. And so I just felt like it was really tough. I was like, damn, I'm never going to be able to dodge this thing. But like now as an adult, I just like kind of I can beat it in like 2 hours, and I kind of laugh at myself. It's like, man, what a pathetic kid. I would go back in time and like call myself pathetic for not being able to beat Animaniacs. Like, it's so easy. But
you would quit
I loved
gaming.
it. I still loved it nonetheless. It like stuck in my brain forever. And
for me, it's definitely Tomb Raider 1. Like, easily. Easily that. Not only because I loved the game, but I thought it was really hard. It was the first the first game of that kind that I played, and like I think I reached like level 2 or 3 a few hours after starting the game, and like figuring out all the things, fighting against the language
I only
barrier.
had the demo, and it's seared into my mind. Like, you go around the mansion and like jump around her weird tutorial obstacle course place, and then there was some place in the demo where you just like spawned in like under a cave where there's like a tiger, I think.
Yeah.
And you'd fight the tiger, and it was weirdly terrifying for some reason. Like it was just so realistic or something. I don't know. And then I couldn't like figure out how to leave the cave. Like, so I would just run around in circles in this tiny space forever, not knowing how to leave or what I was supposed to do, because it was such a weird new experience of a game. But it was like it's like burned in somewhere. Like I remember that forever, and I don't even know how weird it gets later, because I think later you're running around in like flesh tunnels where there's copies of yourself and shit. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What? I had to go back to Tomb Raider. What?
No, Tomb Raider 1 is a fantastic game. It's effectively Prince of Persia, but in 3D. And if I had played Prince of Persia, it would be a much easier start. But my problem was really the puzzles. Like, I think the third level I got stuck and then dropped the game for like a month or something. And this was when I was like probably 14, maybe 13. And then I kept playing, and I got stuck at the cistern level, way deep into the game, like 10 or 20 hours into the game. And then I dropped it for a few years and then went back and finished it. It was fun. Honestly, it's one of my favorite Tomb Raiders.
Wait,
it's not the best Tomb Raider, but
Prince of Persia count as a Metroidvania?
no, does it? It kind of has the sort of design sensibilities where you need to go, avoid places to go to find things. I'm talking about the original, the one for
Yeah.
yeah.
I've only played the reboot that everyone hated, but I had a great time.
I only played the original one a little.
Now I'm just wondering, like, does the original count as a? Because I remember you do unlock stuff and go back, right?
Yeah. Like starting at the beginning, at least the way you get the sword is by going a certain way, and then you can fight and all that. But then you die and you have to start from the beginning, so no.
So it's more like a roguelite. Oh.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that.
I mean, that was just all of the old video games, basically.
Yeah.
It was, fuck you, start over. Castlevania.
Oh,
Like the original Castlevania, you beat in like 45 minutes, but it'll take you like 3 years to actually do that.
Yeah, that's so frustrating. I can't believe people growing up. I mean, it was video games though, so it's like
That's
what
that's
else
what you
did
had
get?
back then. That's what they were like.
Yeah, but
that's
it's
crazy.
very different these days, fortunately.
For me, it's like I think my first memory of a video game was Ninja Gaiden, the original one. I think it's just what we got with my Nintendo.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Which
it
at the
probably came
time-
with your Super Nintendo.
And for a very long time, it was the original Nintendo, and like I my entire timeline of when I thought the consoles came out was all fucked up for most of my life, because of the fact that I grew up with a Nintendo and then later a Super Nintendo and so on. But like I would only realize later that I was always like almost an entire console generation behind. Because like obviously the Super Nintendo is like older than I am, and I only got caught up with the 64, I think. But like I swear I put like all sorts of time into that game, and I probably only ever got to the second level. Like that game's devastatingly hard. But actually, and I'll just say right now, like the next I went on to play Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox, the reboot one that's just called Ninja Gaiden again, and like the fucking exploding shuriken enemies are seared into my mind as like just this like one of the first horrible memories of a video game just being like comically hard in like that way that I like that Souls way basically. And so the next classic game, I've already finished recording it. The next classic game on my channel is going to be Ninja Gaiden Black, because I'm going back.
No.
I went back to go and fucking beat the game that destroyed me as a child. And whew, game's fucking rough.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was not a pleasant experience. I remember beating Ninja Gaiden Black and not.
We'll see how
walking
people
away
react
from
to
it.
that one, because I'm getting some rants.
Yeah, no, it's not. That's the problem too. Is that it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the best made either. There's a lot of really crummy.
No, I had a higher impression of its quality from the part I experienced as a kid, because I hadn't seen the type of bullshit it pulls later. Like there's a certain, like if you know what I mean, like it almost in like that vague like Souls kind of way. It's like the bullshit exploding shuriken ninja guys in like the third level or whatever. They're fucked up. but like within the scope of what you would hope the game might be like. And so you think if you knew that, you might think like, okay, I think I know what kind of game I'm getting myself into. Like I remember fighting throughout that blimp and the guy on the roof of the blimp and stuff, and I remember fighting a horseback dude, and there's like ads in the fight. Oh man, this is too much to handle at once. But like, no, what the fuck the rest of that game? What the actual fuck happens in that game? Like you get a third of the way in and it's like agony. I can't believe that game is what it is. It's my favorite thing about returning to games I didn't beat as a kid is just learning once and for all what they were. And I'm like, what the fuck? People pine after this game. They can't wait for it to come back on a regular basis. What? All these posts like, wow, Ninja Gaiden Black looks great on the Xbox Series X. I'm like, you still want to play Ninja Gaiden Black now?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Go play Devil May Cry 4.
That's the thing. That's the thing, right? Is that it was an OG. It's so like OG Xbox is like the original Xbox, and this is not the era where everyone has figured out how to do 3D action big boss content. So it's very like beyond unnecessarily janky. There's a lot of times where you're like, okay, I probably should have just like not done anything.
Fish.
Yeah, no, it's Ninja Gaiden Black is rough. It's fucking awful.
The Ghost Doku fight where the camera doesn't follow him. So every time you try to combo at him, you end up passing under him, and now he's closer to the camera than you are for most of the fight. And if you get there on hard mode, the ghost fish are there too.
Yeah.
And like you can't really successfully dodge or block most things. And you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like ever?
It's
the number of fights I got through via just cheesing and not even caring about it was too many fights.
Oh yeah, that's definitely how I beat it. That's where I developed that habit of like fighting games. You just keep mashing buttons is because of games like Ninja Gaiden Black. Where I'm like, what the fuck do you do otherwise?
It's like full on like learning that you can like spawn the Sif fight in Dark Souls 1 and then quit out of it. And then once now the cutscene's triggered, so you can go on that one piece of rubble and fire arrows into the boss chamber and kill Sif without actually fighting him. Like that kind of shit was like half of my Ninja Gaiden playthrough of like, how can I not beat this fight in the spirit of the fight? Because they want me to beat 7 fights in a row without any healing items or save points, and I can't even. And they're like, hey, you got 30 grand of bullshit fish money. There's no vendors though, so you can go fuck yourself. You can shove it right up your ass.
Really? There's no vendors?
I can't believe that a fucking video game is real. I look forward to that. It's fucking
but dude, it looks good on the Xbox,
all the way
right?
into May at this point, or March. I played it on my Xbox One. I dusted that off.
No, so it didn't look as good. You could have had it looking great on the Xbox Series X.
Yeah. Yeah, I only played on the Xbox One, not to be confused with the original Xbox.
I mean Xbone?
Yeah. So that's
the original Xbox isn't Xbone. What? You can't fool me.
No, the original Xbox is called the Xbox.
Is the one that summarized it Xbone for its summarize.
Yeah. Which was not intended.
Didn't they eventually make an Xbox something X where it was like a perfect the perfect anagram, or
Xbox One X?
Xbox One X, so that the fucking like initialization would be Xbox. It's like fuck. They're fucking with us now.
It was a lot of like marketing stuff that didn't get contested, and when it eventually went to the wild, they weren't happy that people rejected it all and decided just to make shitty names for it. And they're like, wait a second, we put a lot of time. It's like, no, you didn't. That's why people are upset about it. Like
you and I also went back and played Jedi Power Battles from my childhood, and it was impossible.
Yes, it was fucking
the game
rough.
is fucking impossible to play. I don't know how I ever got anywhere in that game.
You know, it's funny. I thought about that, like especially when you talk about Ninja Gaiden Black. There is this thing of people saying, like, oh, I want games that are like 10-year long games. Like, no, what you want is like Ninja Gaiden Black. You want a game that's so just fucking asininely difficult that you spend 10 years just to beat it. That's what you're asking for. You don't actually want 10 years of experiences. You want to like play Jedi Power Battles where you're doing this for like a century going, what the fuck's wrong with me? How come I can't get past this area when it spawns like 15 people? Like, it just,
Yeah.
it's like, old games are nightmares and people love them. People love these old games, and you're like, have you played an old game? It literally exists because your mom couldn't afford 2. She could only afford 1 game, and that's the game you played for like 6 months, and you like still couldn't beat it. Like,
Fallout 1 is one of the best role-playing games of ever.
I'm
And
sure it was for a lot of kids because they kept walking left, and like they just could not win.
They kept walking left, yeah.
You do not want to walk left in that game.
It's just like,
Ignore everything you learned from platformers. Do not walk left.
I don't understand what the appeal to some of these old games are, because they are just mean. They're brutal games, especially games. The worst offenders are the ones that are just arcade machines turned into console games, which are like, oh, cool. I get all of the fun of being able to play an arcade game unlimited amount of times, but all of the fun of it being just existing to eat my quarters that don't exist anymore. And you're like, what?
Meanwhile,
what
I get so excited when I hear a game's hard, but there's always the question though, like you have to experience it before you know what version of it it is. Like,
yeah, like there's
all
a hard,
because all my favorite games are the ones that are oftentimes the ones that are like, oh, but it's so hard and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, but it's fucking great. It's hard because it's doing something interesting, and you've got to do it. You got to do it.
That's the thing. Is like my philosophy is like, I love hard games where the goal is to teach me a skill by the end of it, versus games that are just hard. If someone says like, no, it's just a hard game, like, I don't want that. That's not what I want. I want a game that like forces me to adapt to a game that is difficult but manageable once you have gotten good at it. Like, yeah, like Dark Souls. Dark Souls isn't a hard game. It's a game that has that is hard when you don't know how to do the mechanics well, which isn't the same thing.
Well,
like once you know what you're doing in Dark Souls, you can just be a fucking asshole. You can start doing dumb little like rolls around a main enemy and like stab his little behind every single time with a banana. Like, that's not a hard game. That's a game that has hard mechanics you've mastered. And those are good. Those are fun games, because I feel like you walk away at the end of those feeling like, man, look at me, I did really good. But like Ninja Gaiden Black, you don't walk away and be like, wow, I'm really proud I beat that game. You're like, why the fuck did I beat that game? Like, why did I do this? Like,
the semantics got very confusing there, but I don't want to interrogate them.
Sure.
I think Dark Souls isn't a hard. Well, the original Dark Souls isn't a hard game, but but if you like, what skills does Dark Souls require? Those skills, you can't learn them outside of Dark Souls, because you need to know how to play Dark Souls. That's the skills. And when you're like a beat 'em up,
that's why I get excited. Yeah, like Dark Souls and Pathologic are like, no, you're just gonna have to figure out what this is. This isn't like Amalur, where it's like, you've played RPGs before, right? Here's your fucking perfectly fitting glove. You'll pick the dialogue options, hit the buttons.
Yeah, like I bet if you play Amalur on hard, they just increase.
The rare loot is purple.
Yeah, imagine if you play Amalur on hard, it just increases the life bar of enemies. Where if you play, like, Dark Souls doesn't need to have a hard or easy mode, because the whole point is that the game is difficult, but up until you learn the mechanics, because that's not the premise of the game. The premise of the game isn't like, man, we want to make it so it takes you 30 minutes to kill an enemy. We want it so that it takes you 30 minutes to learn how to properly kill these enemies fast. Yeah, like that's the difference to me. That's what I was trying to explain. It's like, I want games more on the Dark Souls side. I want to be able to like, and also once I know the mechanics, oh boy, let's have fun now.
Because like, aside from Ancient Dragon, one of the worst fights they've ever made, pretty much every Dark Souls fight is over in like 2 minutes, one way or the other. Even the fucking like Dark 17 phase 1 at the end of Sekiro, as opposed to like so many other fights you can do in other video games. Like, hey, you want to just fucking mash at this guy for like 20 minutes, and then if you die, you get to start the whole thing over again? Fuck you.
Dark Souls 3 isn't quite like that. The ending bosses of the second DLC particularly are quite long. Well, actually, not the ending bosses, the bosses of the second DLC.
Yeah,
I think they started
City, I think it was called. They definitely had some chunky fights, like the 2-phase long demon fight and so on.
Yeah, I don't know. I played Dark Souls 3
that was
in a
difficult
bad
to
environment.
learn. It isn't a very difficult fight.
You played Dark Souls 3 in co-op, where somebody just destroyed it all for you.
Yeah, I just walked up and I was like, I'm gonna hit it once, and it was like, oh my god, something else just getting destroyed.
It's an interesting thing that like you were saying all those things about Dark Souls 1, but it's important to know that the jank is also a very big part of the game. Dark Souls 1 is a very janky game in some parts, and Dark Souls 3 has no jank. They left it all out, which is I wish it did, instead of the big long fights at the end of the second DLC. Just give me jank instead of long fights.
What?
Fill me up with jank.
Give me the Tree of Chaos again.
I think
Are there any games you wish you played when they were popular, but you only started playing after the game died?
It died? Oh my god, what does that
Died
mean?
in
Like
quotes.
like the multiplayer died? I don't know what died means.
It's more died.
My answer
it could be
is
it could be interpreted as the popularity as far as like coverage goes, or it could be interpreted as like like an online game that you got to too late, so you missed its like heyday.
My answer is a flat out no, absolutely not, and I don't think it will ever happen.
I wish I could have been a part of the Left 4 Dead multiplayer scene. I think that would have been fun to like have gotten really good at the PvP aspect. I think like Left 4 Dead PvP sounds appealing from like a conceptual place, but I don't know, because like the one time I tried it when it first came out, I was like, I would rather just like, I have a bunch of other games to play. I'm not going to dedicate time to like getting good at Left 4 Dead when I don't have enough friends to actually even play this anyways. So like I wish now, like I wish I could play online for Left 4 Dead, because I think that would be fun to be able to PvP with a bunch of people and like, I don't know, make plans and strategies of playing as zombies. And like, all right, boys, grab them.
But you weren't emotionally ready for Left 4 Dead at the time. You were like, fuck the idea of co-op games.
Exactly. I still am, but I'm also like, I can see
Overwatch
the appeal.
got you.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones for me. Is I do feel like I missed out by starting Overwatch like practically 4 years late. And on a similar note, I feel like I missed out on ever getting to play TF2 when it was actually a good game. Because like TF2 is just a fucking trash fire of bots apparently now, and like almost nobody cares about it to begin with anymore. And it's just like there's just an obvious prime that has been passed for playing that. There's also MMOs.
MMOs are probably the biggest, I would think, for that. But I was there for Team Fortress 2 at the beginning. And at the time, the very first release of Team Fortress 2 was really good for the time. Since then, we've gotten better. We've gotten better. I think maybe you would have dug into Team Fortress 2, but then you would also have moved on to newer, better things, because it's an era people speak of with reverence. Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's gone forever, so fuck me. It's like
Counter-Strike fire it up like Ninja Gaiden Black and be like, what's it like?
Yeah, it's just like Counter-Strike 1.3 or Unreal Tournament 98, like those games that are the one thing that everybody plays for 1 or 2 years, but then new things come along and make it, better, or at least move the shooter scene in a different direction. The genre of shooters is such a weird thing, because Counter-Strike Global Offensive is still around after all these years. It's still like a major. It's also going the same direction as Team Fortress 2, because
it's weird. It's always weird hearing all those years, because I'm always like, but that's the new one. It's not old yet, right? Oh god,
I remember when they introduced the Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, well, I've never played CS:GO, but I was just like, oh, it's the new CS. And so I still think it was the new CS, and I've never engaged with it. And I'm like, what do you mean it's like 8 years old, or who knows what?
Yeah, I mean, I remember playing like Counter-Strike when it first came out, and I played a lot of it, but it never latched onto me. And I think I probably would have loved Team Fortress, but again, I think I was in a time where I was like, I'm not playing no online multiplayer games. This is for dumbos. And so I just like Overwatch was really because like Overwatch hit me right where I started being wavering on the idea of like, well, I'll never play a online multiplayer game ever again, because like after playing Modern Warfare for so long, is like, I'm done. I don't want to be around people anymore. I think I'm just gonna have fun playing games alone, and that was also a lie. So
Modern Warfare,
I'm definitely not going. Yeah, because I played like 4 heavily. I played 4 so much when it first came out, And then I think like once the new Call of Duty came out, I was like, I don't want to do this all over again. I think I need to stop. And so I just kind of like stopped. I just walked away from it all. And then every time online multiplayer PvP games came out, especially if they're like shooters, is like, no thanks. I have no interest. I don't need to. I have evolved beyond this petty, like childish world. And then I think Overwatch, because Overwatch promised me something else. Like when Team Fortress came out, I still was like very adamant. I was like, okay, it's multiplayer PvP. I don't even want to look at it. But like, so I just ignored the whole thing. But when Overwatch was like, hey, you don't have to, it's not just about killing people. It's like, there are abilities and like you're doing an objective. You're like, oh, okay, wait, this could be good. I don't have to I don't have to camp a spawn for 6 minutes hoping to get my UVA. I can just have that. Okay, I like the sound of that. Like maybe let's go. But yeah, I don't know. I think I feel like I missed out on a lot of multiplayer games, but there's also not a lot of multiplayer games that I necessarily feel like I wished I could have been a part of. Like I don't know, it's a really weird thing to think about, because most of the stuff I play is single player, so nothing's dead to me. I can still go boot it up right now.
Yeah, that's why I say that it's never going to happen to me that I miss the heyday of a game, because I don't think of games in those terms, like, oh, play the newest stuff because that's gonna tend to be better or anything. It doesn't matter.
I mean, the reality is games do have that. Games have a heyday, and in many cases, especially with how video games work these days, like you can genuinely miss out on an experience permanently, and there's no way of recreating it when you get curious about it a decade later.
For sure, but like I just don't play those games.
I can play Super Mario right now, and people will still want to talk to me about Super Mario.
That's what the definition of the word "some" is.
No, it's not. Some implies all. It's either all or nothing.
Like there are video games that just like exist in amber forever, and then there's video games where you can just miss them, and you're like, oh fuck. Like I remember hearing all these cool there's all this there's like extra credits videos about it and other things that discussed it, and I got really like interested in the idea of getting around to the secret world. And then like that game in the version that people were really big fan of at the time, like seems to not exist the same way anymore, and it went free to play and got bought out by a different company and got revamped in some way, and it's now like a secret world technically still exists, but like I think I was looking into it at the time when we were picking what to do after WoW, and I was like, oh, maybe we can do Secret World next. And it's like Final Fantasy 14 it is, because Secret World is mostly negative on Steam, and everyone's really pissed because apparently they just fucking shit all over the game out of nowhere. I'm like, oh great, another game I just missed my window for, because I kept meaning to get around to it, but there's infinite games. And then like, what is it, once upon a time I got really excited about the Matrix Online, and then my computer just couldn't run it. So I was like, fuck me. And then I just missed out on Matrix Online because it came and went, and it was over one day, and it's like I never got to even really see what that was like.
Are you sure it couldn't run, or were you just always in bullet time mode?
Yeah, that's bad for an MMO. That's a disadvantage. That was the, I think, first and only time I've ever like done like forum like role playing, which was the because I was excited about the game, and I made a stupid OC, and like it was basically just inserting Edward Elric into the Matrix universe, but as a mute character that would communicate via like deforming this plaque of steel that they carried around to communicate, essentially, because spoon bending and shit. And so I like there was like an existing story, and I just kind of came in and posted in as my character and so on, and just like that was my one experience with forum role playing ever. But I got into that for like 3 days while I was anticipating the launch of the game, and then I couldn't play it, so fuck. And then I just disappeared from all that.
Yeah, I just don't play that sort of game, but it's that's definitely the case. Like I remember actually being excited for what is it called? All Points Bulletin, I think it is.
Yeah, APB.
Yeah, it was like I
played that.
It was announced.
It was terrible.
It was announced on.
Yeah, it was awful.
But the newest, the version that currently exists is like a they've been bought over like 3 times already.
Yeah.
But it's so predatory. It's like all microtransactioned up to shit, and it's just like all broken and whatnot. Like I remember the last time I thought about that game, I was like, oh, whatever happened to that? And I went and looked, and apparently it's not even like the same game anymore because they just broke it all up. So it's microtransactions and all that. So, yeah.
Sounds about right. That's usually what you do to a free-to-play MMO. You have to make everyone hate it, by making it expensive to enjoy.
Yeah. What video game would you like to see a real life game show version of? None. I don't like game shows. They make me uncomfortable, honestly.
A game show?
What? How does a game show make you uncomfortable? You don't like cooking game shows?
There's like some weird class shit going on that bothers me about game shows, where it's like people that are like it's like a rich company is trying to pit a bunch of poor people together to like compete for people's entertainment in a way that like, wow, you might get this life-changing amount of money, but also they're going to make more money off the show than the contestants ever will still. So it's like it's a really weird dynamic. I much prefer video games that are game shows, because then it's just a video game and it's just the rules of the game and that's it, and not like the weird real life dynamic that game shows have that I'm like, I don't like this actually.
I think
I stopped watching game shows before I was an adult, so I didn't have that perception, but I think you're right.
I think I would say Splatoon. Splatoon would be a really fun game show to watch on like Nickelodeon. I think it'd be fucking great to watch 2 kids with a bunch of
I'm all for Nickelodeon game shows.
Yeah, like could you imagine like could you imagine 2 kids with like
might
slime
go home
backpacks
with an Xbox and that's it. That's the stakes.
Bro, I would be so excited to have like a backpack of ink and I have to like goo the floor more than someone else. I'm there. I would be all over that show. I would watch that shit. I'd be judging kids so harshly. Like, come on, Tim, how the fuck did you miss that shot? You piece of garbage. Do it. Get the ground. Like
oh, another kid drowned in the pool.
Right? Like, come on, what are you...
It's funny. This is the exact arc I had when I was poking at the Squid Game scripted bit, where I'm just like, I don't like this shit. Where it's like, you want to win? You might win $1 million, and I'm like, I don't like the entire everything surrounding that. I'm not happy with any of that. But then I was writing about Legend of the Hidden Temple, and it's like they might get chocolate or an Xbox game, and it's like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and as a kid, I barely remembered there were prizes. I just wanted to play. I just wanted to be on Legend of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if I can get through the temple. I was like, I'm a smart kid. I can beat the trivia battle and get up the steps.
Right.
Yeah,
that's the thing is like I much prefer I just much prefer stuff where it feels non I don't know, like vindictive.
Yeah, not exploiting
like,
the fact that people need they need money
like
for food
it's
or house.
something about like, okay, dude, are you good at climbing through a jungle gym? Yeah, okay, I could do that. Like that seems like really innocuous and fun and okay, but I don't like the stuff where it's like, hey, like Squid Game's a worst example because it's just so cartoonishly evil. But like the idea,
simple. Yeah,
the idea that you need some kind of like adult level skill to succeed is kind of just, I don't know, it's boring. I don't really care. I mean, cooking shows are kind of nice. That's why I kind of like cooking shows, just because it's very. It's not. I don't think it's very class based. I think it very much is a difference between like. Someone actually, in a weird sense, I've been watching like Worst Cooks in America, and it's kind of a class warfare against like rich people are bad. Stop buying food. Like just go make food. You dumb
Stop buying any food.
Yeah, like it really is just like
throw it in garbage.
It literally like the whole show is just, hey, I'm gonna grab all the people who literally buy DoorDash every day and make them cook food for once. Like that's the whole premise, and it's like, okay, well, if you can do DoorDash every day of the week, I'm pretty confident.
Isn't that just
like,
cooking with Andrew?
It kind of is. Like there are some of the
season 2.
I gotta get
just implying seasons now.
I gotta get a kitchen. I don't have like a kitchen space anymore. It's too small. No. It's just too tiny for me to fit anything in it. But
and filming food must be like a nightmare. You did very well on your second video onwards. Your first video was I didn't like it.
So my two biggest hurdles is one, I need like
Sorry,
I need a
Slides and
better
notes.
yeah, I need a better kitchen to do this in, because like literally my kitchen is like the size of a hallway, and so
I've seen some
like,
hallways.
no, and it's that size. The hallways you've seen, it's that size. That's how big that kitchen is. Like when I'm washing dishes, if I'm washing dishes, you can't use the fridge or the oven. Like that's it. I've taken the whole kitchen up. It's a 1-person kitchen.
Oh, when you're
Which
hand
sounds-
washing dishes.
Yeah, because there's no
I'm
dishwasher
like, what is
here.
your dishwasher doing?
Yeah, you can't fit a dishwasher here because there's not enough fucking room for a dishwasher. You only get two machines.
When I
and it
use
was
the dishwasher,
oven.
the fridge shuts down.
There's barely room for a microwave. Like I can barely fit the microwave here.
God damn.
It's rough. I don't know who this was made for. Like it's baffling. I was like, what is the point? But then there's like, it's fine. Anyways, my second hurdle is I need a
It
camera.
doesn't sound like it's fine.
Because my phone camera, so it sounds like it's fine because I can cook in it. I just can't record myself cooking in it. The problem is my phone camera can't do it anymore. So for some reason, I don't know what it is. Probably because I decided not to be a lunatic. I didn't buy like a $15,000 phone, and so my current phone will actually run out of battery before I finish filming. Which is a problem I ran into, was that it would either overheat because of like all the lights and the kitchen and stuff like that, or
You don't need to buy a 4,000 phone.
Well, I don't know, something about my phone it cannot record that long. And I'm not like
for sure, yeah.
I'm not being crazy. I'm recording just like 1080. I'm not, so I'm not uploading like 4K 120 FPS here.
At the same time,
Like,
yeah.
So, but the phone, like, it's not even running out of space. It just will literally shut down and be like, I either overheated or the battery died. And I'm like, what the fuck? You're not even good for this. Okay, great. So I need like a regular camera, and I'm like considering one, but I think for now I just need to. I'll probably just use my webcam because that's a 1080 60 FPS camera, and that's fine. And it doesn't need to be anything else.
Any book recommendations?
Fine book. Does it have to be like words?
Books. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm really into Witcher right now. Oh, that's a weird thing. That's weird to say it that way, because when other people say that, I mean, like, I've read the entire franchise in a week and I'm rereading it, and it's like I take forever to get through books. But I fucking love that the first part of the Witcher saga, which is after the 2 short story books, is a 50-page diatribe where Dandelion tells the events of the last 2 books essentially to an audience, and then that audience sits there and argues about whether or not the story is true and literal, and they're arguing, and since they're people in that universe, they're also like, well, I know this or that, or I was there and that part doesn't make sense, and obviously that part's true, and they're like fighting back. Oh yeah, you were at that war. It's funny, I didn't see you there. And it's like continuing to argue about this, and then they look back at the stage and he's fucking gone. It's like just a 50-page death of the author chapter is fucking the funniest way to open your entire saga about the Witcher and the story and everything. I'm like, what a great fucking story. And I'm having a great time with Beastars as a series as well, which just has like the perfect blend of like, it's got shonen story structure sometimes, but doesn't really bother with the annoying tropes that pad out shonen storytelling, and instead substitutes that with a bizarre nature of like every chapter you're like, oh, we're doing this now. This is a thing that happens. Okay. And like the frequency with which I can turn to the next chapter and not know where the fuck it's going is just a real ride. And then I'm having a lot of fun pulling the weird themes out of it and writing about that, because it does a lot of really clever, weird shit, despite feeling like it's made up along the way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really don't have recommendations.
Fuck you.
Do you not read? What's wrong with you?
I stopped the last book I was reading. I was going through A Song of Ice and Fire again. I read them all once, and I'm going through the second time. and I stopped. I don't remember why, but it was like life thing. And then I haven't picked up the I don't even remember the name of the app that I used to read anymore. It's the Moon thing.
Things are going well.
Moon Reader.
Yeah, Moon Reader.
So I would recommend Discworld. That's
Terry Pratchett.
That's been pretty fun. Yeah, I've been my girlfriend apparently loves it to death. So she has like every book. And so that was like she asked me to read it, and so I've been reading that. And it has some really good humor. Like it's pretty top-notch fun. It is kind of chaos theory. Like you kind of do have to go in with a lot of just like, sure, I guess kind of feelings. Like you just have to accept a lot of stuff happening.
Just be ready for some bonkers shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like a chest that has feet. Like I don't like that. I don't like that at all. It's not great, but it's there, and it.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the normal feet that furniture sometimes have.
I mean, it's made out of human wood. What did you expect? Or sentient wood. Sorry, it's made out of sentient wood.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot of fun stuff. It's a lot of chaos. It's just really goofy, silly, fun time. But yeah, those have been great. As for manga, I've just been reading a bunch of garbage romance stuff, so I don't recommend them because they're garbage. But that's pretty much all I've been reading lately. I've just been
after reading Good Omens, which is by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and then watching the Amazon series on it and so on, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna have to read Sandman and Discworld, aren't I? That's not a tall order at all. I'll get that done in an afternoon.
Yeah,
like, those are both so long.
Yeah, no, Terry's got some good books. If you can find them at your local library, do it. Grab them, take a read. They're great.
It's been a few years now, so my memories have faded a bit, but I was pretty obsessed with Hank Green's An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, which is just so specifically written from the perspective of somebody that has been way more prominent of a public online figure than me for even longer than I've been doing it. Because I've been doing it for like a decade, but he's been doing it on a much larger scale for almost twice as long. And like there's a lot of moments where it was just really cathartic to read parts of it, but also just like other elements that are just like worrying and distressing in its own ways too, of just like elements of like how you cease to own your own story, and like how you become this like public thing that people talk about and trade, and you'll have these like bizarre experiences that definitely happen where you just will see two people talking to each other about you and disagreeing, but neither of them are right. Like they both have this bizarre like other version of you. Like it's intensely into like the parasocial relationship stuff and the bizarreness of rising fame and these elements of having an audience that are just like really specific, while also being a much more fun version of the movie Arrival, which was like, oh, there's like an alien thing happening, but it's kind of a test, and what does it mean, and how does everyone react to it, and how does that like polarize everybody at once? And like it obviously has like it has a reactionary character, and it has the kind of tug and war about responding via fear or curiosity and so on, and it's just really, really, really fun sci-fi that I had a great time reading, to the point where I put it in my banner on YouTube. It's one of the many little Easter eggs on my YouTube channel, is that there's a little Carl on my on that traveler's pack on my YouTube banner that has the Tilo's hat sticking out of it. That little black splotch is Carl from An Absolutely Remarkable Thing.
Don't go and look at it, because if you can't recall it from memory, you're not a true Keith fan.
Because I was going through shit.
Better have it right in your cranium.
As the real good plug, it's much more visible if you look at my Patreon. It genuinely is. The banner on Patreon is taller than the one on YouTube, so you can see it better. But also go to my Patreon.
I don't know. Seems suspicious. Does he even have a Patreon? I think he might be lying.
It's not Keith Ballard. Is it Keith Ballard? No, it's Sebastian. Yeah.
Let's see. Patreon Keith Ballard. Does it come up if you search it? Yes. Okay. But yeah, all my URLs are Sebastian SB because that's just, you know, it was poorly thought out originally, but at least be consistent forever.
Yeah.
But you can usually find me on everything by searching my name because that's YouTube. The internet's smart enough to know that usernames are annoying and stupid, and everyone has one.
Except when your name is shared by a famous person, then you're in trouble.
Keith Ballard isn't famous. Nobody even knows what hockey is.
I mean, you're right. The only places I know what hockey is are places that
I'm slowly, now that he's retired from too many concussions, I'm going to slowly overtake him on SEO.
Did he really retire from concussions?
I think so,
absolutely.
yeah. I think he's
most
like,
hockey players retire from concussions.
I think he might be like an NHL correspondent now or something. I don't even know what he looks or sounds like. I just know he exists. But I overtake him on Reddit in that if you put Keith Ballard in quotes and search it by date or sort it by date, I get mentioned more often now than he does. It's usually Outer Wilds posts over and over again.
It looks like he stopped playing in 2015. So yeah, you give it like another 5 years, you probably will overtake him completely.
Yeah. As a content creator focusing on games, where is the line drawn between a me game and a YouTube channel game? We all have very different answers for this.
Yeah.
Andrew doesn't give a fuck. Everything's a me game pretty much until there's an event.
Yep.
My line is very easy. Minecraft. That's the line.
Minecraft is your me game?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't count all the games that I play with you guys that also don't make it into my channel.
Yeah.
But
that's your choice.
Yeah. Those effectively are still content and still...
Yeah, you're still performing for an audience.
Mm-hmm. But Minecraft, I am not. I am the greatest builder in the world. And nobody will ever see any of it.
Someone in your audience is like, wait, what? There's like just now finding out that like, what are there's hundreds of videos that Colonel's in that aren't on his channel? I gotta subscribe to this asshole too.
Yes, it wasn't that obvious. I thought it was obvious. Go subscribe to Keith and Andrew and Bird, and
especially with your output now because of your new job. There's like I essentially compete with your channel for quantity of videos that you're in per week.
God.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. It's goofy. Yeah, let's see. But for me, it's almost everything is a YouTube channel game. Like I so often do blind playthroughs that it's like if I play anything that I'm interested in playing, it becomes a game that I can never do a blind playthrough on, basically. So I like lose that essentially. So usually a me game is basically just whatever weird task I'm trying to grind through in some kind of MMO or whatever the fuck, which is often still itself related to the channel in its own way. Like I was WoW raiding with the intent of making videos on it, which that didn't age well. And I was putting a lot of time in off camera into Final Fantasy 14 to then enable making all of those like Beast Tribe videos, which I've finished now. So I'm back to not playing Final Fantasy 14 in my free time. But like I put enough time into the channel that it's like in my free time I don't always want to play video games. Like if anything, the multiplayer stuff's kind of my me games in a way, but they're also on the YouTube channel. So because I also upload the me games, it's pretty much just like, I'm gonna like, I got YouTube essays to keep up on, and I've got shows to eventually chip away at, and books, and like at some point, I gotta like cook or something, and like before long, you're like, wow, I really need to sleep, and when the fuck do you play video games for fun? Not that but I like the key is to enjoy playing the video games for YouTube, because that's my video gaming pretty much.
What kind of gamer doesn't play games when he's not gaming?
Yeah.
God.
I'm such a gamer that I game even when I'm not. I'm genuinely like, like because the indie game backlog is so infinite. I'm like, every now and then I'm like, maybe I will play one of these just in my free time, but also record it non-commentary style, and then like do a review of it basically, and like that'll be like some of the like that's some of the content I might make on Boring Keith is video game reviews of whatever brand that, like whatever form that takes for me, if I see something interesting, just because yeah, you can't let's play everything. You just can't. Like the list always grows faster than it shrinks.
Yeah, I think if you want to, like, I tried doing streaming for some games that I knew I couldn't do let's plays of. Like, for example, specifically, The Witcher 3 was a game that at the time I couldn't do a let's play because I knew there was going to be like 2 or 3 episodes in a row every once in a while of me just trying and dying to some monsters or whatever. Because it's a game that I knew the pacing wasn't necessarily the most conducive to unedited let's plays. So I started streaming because of that. And I think it could be an option for you, Keith, to specifically some games that you want to. No.
Nah. One, I don't like the idea of streaming something and it being like on some other platform somewhere else. Go find that. But if I'm uploading it, then it's just a let's play. Yeah. That's just if I turn it into videos that I upload it, that's just a let's play, but I have to deal with a live audience. Like that's not meaningfully different for me. I don't understand the distinction that's drawn usually. It's like, I streamed it for like 10 people live and it was a better experience because it was like a live stream for them at the time for like 10 people, but then like thousands of people are just going to watch what's ultimately just a let's play video that's in the context of having been streamed. And so it's still like it's like the exact same workload as a normal let's play basically, except with the additional stress of trying to stream, which I hate when I'm alone because then I actually have to think about the audience and because it's like, why am I streaming if not to think about whether or not the audience should be interacted with and so on, as opposed to like multiplayer stuff where I'm just streaming because fuck it, everyone else is streaming, so let's stream.
So I think for me, like it's down to the different ways we both stream. I interact with the audience a lot more, even though I have a smaller audience, but I like my streams are always more full of me rambling about nonsense stuff that in the middle that isn't even about the game because people ask questions or they just talk about random stuff. And so
like I've seen channels do that, and I don't want to do that. Like I think about like Game Grumps has all their Zelda playthroughs that do really well and all that, and they go through all the series. They started streaming during Skyward Sword. And so it's like they're way less focused. The jokes are way less frequent. There's a bunch of random people in the room that they're just kind of chatting with, like they're ordering food and like they're big multi-hour streams. And every now and then they just sit there and read donations for 20 minutes straight and so on. It's like, that's agony for literally everybody that likes the way I make content.
It's worse. Yeah, absolutely. What I'm saying is like, if you enjoy that, which is not a given considering you don't do that, and I think you, from what you say, you might not enjoy. But if you did enjoy that,
I figure I'll just do it the way I do it now, or I'll not do it at all. And then the alternative is be like, there's infinite games, and like the whole point of my current change to my schedule is to be like, there are X number of videos per day, and we're keeping it down to that number. And the numbers and the videos are doing way better as a result, because like the video spam on the scale that I had before, it's still pretty spammy now, like any Let's Play channel is, but it was so many videos that it was like an incomprehensible deluge. And it's like going back to then being like, and now I just do big mega streams, and then I chop those up into videos and put them on the channel anyways. That's just going right back to the original problem, but even worse content than ever before.
Yeah.
It's like it's way better to be like, no, I'm gonna like hang out and play fucking boyfriend dungeon or something, and be like, let's see what this controversy is about, and what does this mean in this context, and what's the game actually like, and then I'll just write a script about it and so on, and put that up, and like that's a better video than and that also lets me cover a game I might not get around to otherwise in like a concise way in a different context. That's also good in its own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. You're right in what you're saying. It's just it doesn't fit into the way you're doing things. I knew that because also for you to interact with an audience while streaming, you need to have a face cam, because otherwise it's just unless you're a really big streamer, in which case
and that's a great introducing face cam's a great way to make me not do something.
I understand.
I'll procrastinate for a while on even recording my video essays and be like, let's work on the next essay. I'll record, I don't know, next week, because you just like gotta be like you gotta like work up some confidence to appear on camera and shit. And I've got a plenty history of people just leaving weird, shitty comments that make me not want to appear on camera even more. 'Cause that's the whole thing of putting yourself out there and then being punished for being vulnerable.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's see. Definitely some more skippable ones that I don't think I want to go through.
You hear that, viewers? Your question was skippable. Technically, all questions are skippable.
Yeah, you just scroll and you're like, haha, bye.
Like, for example, I picked a question at random and it was actually a skippable question. I'm not going to call them out. You're going to skip it. I know you're going to skip it.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some super skippable ones. Oh, that's wow. This is like someone wrote like a 5-part. That was like the part I read was like the beginning of like a 5-part question.
And it was all skippable.
The rest of it's gone. Well, I already answered. We spent like a half an hour on the first part of the question, and we didn't have the context of the rest. So who cares?
No, it's nice then. We were inconsiderate and helpful at the same time.
Yeah. What do you want from game sequels? A creative mix-up of being completely different, like Majora's Mask, or just more of the same? And what upcoming games would you apply that for? I mean, I want games to be completely justified in existing as a singular product on their own. Like, they can have continuity with other games narratively and all that, but like, the game should be worth playing and interesting in its own right, and so on. So like, if you essentially just make the same game over and over again, that can be really disappointing. And like, even like there's like a singular iconicness, even like with some of the early Souls games, that like is diminished by making some more Souls games, for example, and not going and striking out, which I respect. This is what I respect about like Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring stuff, is being like, let's fucking actually do something different and not be like Call of Duty 72 and so on, to punch the usual punching bag. And in that way, yeah, like Majora's Mask is just a fucking fascinating sequel to Ocarina of Time, because it takes so many risks and does so many interesting things, instead of just being another Zelda, in a way that a lot of the later Zeldas try really hard to just be another Zelda in a lot of cases, but with the one gimmick that's on the cover. And that way I was like, don't just make another Pokemon where you walk around a map and you capture some Pokemon and then they battle. Like, give me like let's go crazy. Like, you know how you could use cut to break a bush? Well, we're in the 3D world now, bro. Now your fucking Pokemon let you do like Breath of the Wild style environmental interactions to explore this big land and stuff. And it's like, no, there's no Revali's Gale and Pokemon Shield. It's still just Pokemon Yellow, but in 3D.
It's a really difficult question, I feel.
Yeah. And like on a similar note, like Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out, and I'm like, well, I don't want it to just be Breath of the Wild again. Like, I loved Breath of the Wild specifically because of how different it was from the other ones in a lot of ways, but like Breath of the Wild 2, I'm like, okay, well, what are you gonna do? Like, maybe you can reintroduce the dungeons into the overworld, and then those dungeons give you the dungeon items like they did before. But instead of being like such an obvious like use key unlock, they're fully like Breath of the Wild-ized, and like you get the fucking spinner top thing from Twilight Princess that lets you like grind along walls, but it works on like mountains, and you can like navigate the environment with it. But maybe it has like a fuel mechanic, so you can, or an overheat mechanic, so you can only do it for so long at a time. And there's like an upgrade system for being able to reach further and further with it, and that affects your ability to get around the world, similarly to the stamina system of the original game. Like, I'm like, do something, please. Don't just be like, and more of the thing you guys loved.
The way you're talking actually allowed me to come to terms with my own feelings about this. So first off, let's just get out of the way that I hate it when like hardcore niche games get sequels that just become they're shooters now. Congratulations, you have a shooter with a 2 after, or a 3. So that aside, that feeling aside, because it's definitely a bias shooter. Yeah, because that's definitely a bias for me. Is that feeling? But I think there are 2 types of sequels. There are 2 types of games in general, and then the sequels. And your commentary about Breath of the Wild definitely is what made me realize this just now. Is there's games where they're constrained by what they can do, like either because of the genre that they're in or because of the story that they're telling. The games can't be all at all times, and I think from a mechanic, if like Breath of the Wild is all in terms of the mechanics that it tries to put onto the table, like it exhausts the mechanics. It does it all. You don't need more Breath of the Wild. If you want Breath of the Wild 2, you're going to need to introduce new mechanics. But in terms of the storyline, it's not really what the game is there for, even though it does have a storyline and it stands on its own and all that. But it's more of a flavor. And there's games that work kind of the other way around, where the flavor is the mechanics. Like, for example, a turn-based strategy game. The turn-based strategy is just sort of the flavor of the game. Like, what you're really there for is the implementation and how difficult and the challenge and all, like the specifics of how that flavor is implemented. For example, so having, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a turn-based strategy game like Civ, for example, just having Civilization 7 or whatever comes after being all of a sudden a real-time MMO. Even though it's all still in the heart of the series. It's what is civilizations growing and whatnot. Like games don't do that these days as much, but they use, like in the 2000s, it was all the rage, just shifting genres because it was the hot new thing. And like Civ would be an interesting one. Just now Civ 7 is a MMO. That's what you get because that's where all the rage is. Like that's really bad. Because you're not the heart of Civ isn't
Civilization 7, the lifestyle game.
The heart of Civ specifically isn't.
The years progress in real time.
I think like the heart of Civ isn't in the fact that civilizations grow. It's the fact that you control the growth. Like the next Civ could be about your house growing, and it would still feel like a Civ game. It would play like a Civ game if they have that sort of gameplay mechanics. And it would be weird, but like what I'm saying is there's games that focus on different things. So for a sequel to work well, it needs to identify what the intention of the game is and build on it. So, and I think a sequel to Breath of the Wild can't be it can't be just more of the same, because it's going to be Breath of the Wild again. It's like Super Mario Kart. It doesn't matter what you play. There's no sequels for Super Mario Kart because it's always the same game. Even though it isn't quite, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Mario Kart usually has to try to justify its existence by having some kind of mechanical change. Otherwise, it's like, we already have Mario Kart, bro. The only justification you have is that it's on a new console at best half the time.
And that's, I mean, I think that's how
they're all like, double dash, anti-gravity, let's go.
Yeah. They do add some new things.
Yeah.
But my problem is, like, I look at Portal 2 and the way it builds on Portal 1, and like that's the perfect sequel because it does everything. Good. It does everything better and more, and it's just great. But that's also because the first game was constrained. Yeah. The scope of the game is very short, and it was like a tech demo. It's like there's so many, like it works really well for that. But then I look at Ubisoft and all the games that they make. I don't even, like, it could be any one of the games that Ubisoft makes, and none of their sequels is warranted. None of them. Just stop all of them forever, and it's it.
Oh, yeah,
because you don't need, just make new stuff, like that samurai game that they made that is just Far Cry in samurais.
That's not Sucker Punch. That's not Ubisoft.
That's not Ubisoft?
That's how infuriatingly pervasive the Ubisoft formula is, despite everyone complaining about Ubisoft all the time, is that everyone else makes Ubisoft games now. So like Horizon Zero Dawn and Ghost of Tsushima are inseparable mechanically from Ubisoft games, but they're not by Ubisoft.
Sorry, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, see, that's why I was so disappointed. Everyone's like, Ghost of Tsushima Game of the Year. I'm like, this is just Assassin's Creed, you guys, come on. I thought we were coming to terms with how bad Assassin's Creed was, and you're like, Game of the Year, the Assassin's Creed, but not.
There's not a lot of options, Keith. Have you looked at the poor
There's so many options.
There's a lot of options.
Have you looked at the poor PlayStation library? It has nothing.
I'm worried about how it'll be received when we get to the Inscription finale, because I kind of I kind of talk a little shit where I'm not really like actively, I'm not talking complaining about the game specifically, but I'm like, if you guys are like really impressed by this game, like it's this big event, like, oh my God, what a crazy indie game. I'm like, play indie games. Cause like
Right.
this Inscription is neat. It's not remarkable. Like there's so much stuff like that and so much stuff that goes into so many different territories. And like, if you found Inscription impressive, like, yeah, it's a good product that does some interesting things by a good developer. I'm not talking shit about it, but boy, the market is so saturated with so much good shit. And like the way that like there's a weird chosen one game every 6 months where it's like Deathloop or not Deathloop, Loop Hero or Darkest Dungeon or Inscription or whatever, and like it's like there's one indie game that the whole like AAA audience suddenly notices all at once, like Undertale or Stardew, and I'm like, guys, there's so much like this. I promise, it's everywhere. It's
you
so
mentioned
good.
Darkest
Please
Dungeon.
stop playing Ubisoft games and the games that are just Ubisoft but not.
You mentioned Darkest Dungeon, and I was actually thinking of Darkest Dungeon 2 when I was trying to compile my thoughts. Darkest Dungeon is an interesting game to have a sequel to, because you shouldn't have a sequel to it. Because the story is non-existent, so it isn't about the story. And the setting is, I mean, it's well drawn, so it isn't about the setting, it's about how we draw it. And the mechanics, that's it. You play Darkest Dungeon 1, and that's the game. Like, you go back to play it. If they want to, like, it's the kind of game that if they want to make a sequel, they should make Darkest Dungeon, but in space, with similar mechanics and just sort of like similar ethos, or maybe mix it up a little bit depending on what you want, or Darkest Dungeon but like it's cats now, or it's a visual novel but Darkest Dungeon. That's how you do a sequel to that game, not by making what they did with Darkest Dungeon 2, which is turning it into what's that game with the game with the cards? There's a game with the cards that I never played. Slay the Spire, yeah. So it's like a cross between Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire.
Yeah,
Spire.
And looking at my emails all the time for all the press emails I get, I would see so many Darkest Dungeon clones, of which I covered some as Let's Tries. And then out of nowhere, like, yeah, Slay the Spire came out, and then a fucking like light switch just flipped, and then they were all Slay the Spire clones, all the way down to like there's a deck on the bottom, there's a hand on the bottom of the screen, and then a curvy arrow points at the thing you're dragging it to, and then there you can see in advance what the numbers are going to be for next turn, and you've got to like nullify it as best you can. Like, I'm like, it's so specific. So the idea that you say Darkest Dungeon now takes after Slay the Spire is hysterical to me.
There's some things that like it's not a blatant clone like that.
Yeah,
there's some things that
but it's just the Ouroboros is now eating itself.
Yeah, I was really disappointed with the first version of Darkest Dungeon 2. I think go ahead.
I think I agree with Keith in the idea that I think sequels are fine, but I think they need to be able to stand alone. Like, if your sequel, if I can't pick up your sequel and enjoy it without having consumed the first game, I think it's not a good sequel. I don't care about story, like that's irrelevant. It's more of just like mechanically speaking, it should feel good to play your game. It shouldn't feel like I should not feel like I need to have played the first game in order to mechanically understand how to play the second.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't also be, your sequel shouldn't be insane enough that it branches ridiculous from the first game, if that makes sense. Like, I don't I like a good example is Doom and Doom Eternal. And Doom Eternal it's like almost similar enough that you could pick it up. But I think like I like the mechanics are almost the same. There are little bits that make it different between each other, but it's enough that if they can stand alone on their own. But Doom Eternal's like level design gets worse, which is a funny, like, I appreciate that. That's a lot. That's what I expect from a sequel, is that there's always going to be a superior one, but it shouldn't be like that bad. It shouldn't, like, I'm trying to think of like a good example of like a playing a game and then playing its sequel and being like, what did you do?
I'm kind of fascinated by literally the entire Nintendo era's sequels. because they
isn't there?
none of them played it safe. Like
No.
like the United States, Mario 2, Zelda 2, Castlevania 2. Like there were so many like, whoa, what's happening? And I kind of respect that. I kind of love how fucking weird most of the sequels were, instead of just being the same thing again like you'd expect. And like it's kind of fucking cool.
Isn't a lot of it because like they had other games being developed, and a lot of games just are developed without really knowing what they're going to end up being, and then we had this game that was like, I don't know, some other thing, and now it's Super Mario 2 all of a sudden. Well, I guess that's it.
I know that was I know that it was literally like that was Doki Doki Panic was a completely different game that just became in the West Mario 2 for some reason, because they instead of them putting out the original Mario 2.
Development. I mean, like the Sonic Fox game mid-development changed.
Sonic
it used
Fox
to be
game?
The one that you played with the dinosaurs and the furry.
Oh, I'm
people.
like, does Sonic Fox have a game? I didn't hear about that.
Oh, it's not Sonic. I'm sorry.
Sonic Fox is the furry MLG dude that plays all the fighting games.
I'm getting my furries mixed up. I'm sorry.
Star Fox Adventures used to be Rareware Games' Dinosaur Planet, featuring like a wolf dude, and then he got replaced by Fox, and then the wolf dude's sister became the love interest that's stuck in a crystal the entire game, and then they had, and it just became, and also it's a weird, complicated gaming. You always want to, like, when you hear these narratives, you try to clean them up and come up with like a clean thing, and then you keep getting weird details that contradict it more, and you're like, wait, what? So on top of that, Dinosaur Planet was originally a 64 game, and the 64 version that leaked last year or the year before that people have been trying to clean up to make playable lately, it already had Fox assets in it. So the protagonist had already been switched to Fox in that version on 64 before they even went to say fuck it and remake the whole game on GameCube and put it out there.
Yeah,
it's
game
like, it's really
development.
Interesting.
It's you can mix all those things together.
Yeah,
especially because
there were some really frustrated people that went back and tried to mod the original character into the game instead of Fox, because they wanted to have this like weird retro hidden like missing link Dinosaur Planet game, and they were mad that the version that had leaked out had Fox in it. And it's like, no,
it's already contaminated. Yeah.
I think there's also like Nintendo kind of had a philosophy of being really concerned about stagnation, so they were just really worried that if you made the same thing again, people just wouldn't buy it, and so you just kind of have to like they would be more receptive to people showing up and be like, knock knock, I made Mario but with like a pole, and you're like, okay, talk more about that, tell me why he has a pole. And like they keep that philosophy up, but I think the early era, they were really just like, they're just really machine gunning it all out, just like, sure, that sounds great, do it, go for it. Like just so much weird stuff ended up coming out because they just really pushed whatever weird different, like if it just sounded cool, that was what got made. But like they
and
also
to some extent, like, who fuck sequels?
Yeah,
also
but
that,
like
yeah,
that, I mean, that's the thing, is like Nintendo also has this really long like almost unnecessarily long sometimes development time. So they'll basically like make a game and then give it to Miyamoto, and he like just goes, no, this is poopy, and then like throws it on the ground and cries, and then they just go like, well, I guess we'll make a whole new Zelda now. And like that just is a normal day-to-day thing in Nintendo. So sometimes they just have to take a risk and be like, we're just gonna make a thing, and it's gonna have to be what you guys enjoy until we like get something we care about out, which is like how ARMS existed. Is they're like, well, we need something, like we don't have time to make a new Metroid, so here's a weird throwaway IP, hope it works out. And people are like, yeah, it was okay, it was mediocre. It's like, well, it was good enough time to buy us some time before Animal Crossing, and we're like, yeah. Like it's just like that's like Nintendo's philosophy is always trying to, like, they want every sequel to feel different from each other, but they also can't just pump them out like other developers are willing to do, like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty. And so it ends up creating, those kind of companies end up creating a lot of stagnation really fast, because once they get an IP that gets more than like 2 copies sold, they're like, all right, we're making 50 of these now, sign it up, boys, every year. and it's like, oh shit, all right. Whereas Nintendo just like Mario Kart 8 has been on like 3 consoles now, and they just don't give a shit. There's like, yeah, all right, that's fine. Like you're gonna have to wait. We're just not done with a new Mario Kart yet because it's not interesting. It's like, oh, all right, I guess. But Mario Kart 8's fun enough that it keeps itself alive somehow. But yeah, I don't know. That's just sequels are weird.
I'm in the fuck sequels camp just because like I like not being constrained by the previous game and getting to be like, do your thing, and like obviously like Elden Ring and Bloodborne, like there are things that From Software obviously chooses to keep from previous games. They're not just going off in a completely different direction the way they used to before Dark Souls came out. But like they don't. But by rebranding over and over again, they can just kind of do what they want to an extent. And I kind of like some of the really cool eras of game stuff. Like I see like the creators of Heroes of Might and Magic, Dark Messiah, and Dishonored, like they've put out like Prey and Deathloop, and it's like just make up a new thing, just fucking go. And it's like obviously there's similarities between the recent games, but like there's like a fun to that. But like at the same time, I'm saying this knowing full well that like if I look at any examples that come to mind that did that stuff, they super died after like 3 games. Because like the first things that comes to mind, I'm like, oh yeah, Ion Storm, Daikatana and Acronox and Deus Ex, oh they're dead. Troika games, Arcanum, Temple of Elemental Evil, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, oh they're dead. Usually it's like 3 unique IPs and then they're dead after like being around for about 4 years or so is like the pattern. It's like, so it's not the best advice, but I like that more than like fucking Assassin's Creed subtitle.
Well, the reason I like the problem, let's not make excuses for, or rather let's not belittle that business model too much, because the reason why that business model doesn't work is because the sequel model is just so effective with in a marketing dominated.
People just want the safe bet of buying thing they've heard of and then get the next thing.
And that's
because Prey itself, which is just a new thing itself, is a victim of exactly that. They forced them to use the Prey IP, even though I'm pretty sure no one remembers Prey from 2006. But Bethesda's had such a hard on for that IP that they fucking sued another company for using the word Prey in their title, and then also forced company name to make their next game be Prey, even though it had nothing to do with Prey.
Yeah.
Which is funny
silly as shit.
I guess, I don't know. I guess if you've got creating original IPs is really tough. So once you've done it, you got to hold on to it. Like you got to do whatever you can to keep it going. And like like asking Ubisoft to say like, hey, what if you guys did something besides like a Tom Clancy or Assassin's Creed game? It's like, oh fuck, what are you like magic? Are you a magic man? You're just gonna come up with new ideas like that? Where's those ideas? I can't make new ideas. And
like I half expect to find out that if I Google hard enough that Deathloop is actually an obscure 80s NES game that Bethesda has the IP rights to. And so they had to use that title this time.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That does sound like something Activision probably has just in their garbage Atari vault sitting there. There's like, we've got like 15,000 patents for names. Pick one. Doesn't have to be relevant. No one's going to remember it. All the fans are dead anyways. So I guess in this timeline, I guess no one really remembers the original. No one remembers the game they played last time because they seem to keep buying the next one, which implies that they definitely didn't play the last game. But let's see.
What's a game you really want to discuss with friends, but you can't due to spoilers? We can't because of spoilers. Boom, answers itself.
Wow, that solved it.
What's your favorite moment of Beastars? Also spoilers, but it'll probably come up in the video if it ever gets done. So
we could say the name
of the video
if
it ever gets done.
Yeah, I think a game that I wish I could talk about with people is
I mean, I wish I could talk about Pathologic.
Okay.
Ow, fuck. I didn't like that.
Good job. That's what you get. Don't ask questions.
I
Like
mean,
that.
I'd love to be able to talk to people about Pathologic too, but no one will play it.
ain't got
No,
time
it's
for
not really
that.
about the spoilers.
No, it's just the fact that it's because the spoilers thing is mostly irrelevant. We're not a bunch of trend chaser people in our entire community group, so no one gives a fuck about like the popular things, which is the thing what people mean about spoilers usually.
Mhm.
Instead, it's just the fact that if you talk about a game no one's played, they just glaze over and aren't really listening.
Mhm.
Like the context isn't there. It's more that it has to be like a shared experience on some level. Otherwise, I can just shout all I want about like how much fun I had as Symmetry yesterday or whatever the fuck, and it's like what the fuck is this man saying at me?
Yeah. I don't think I have any game that I have like the feeling of, oh, this plot twist thing. Like, I have games that I love because of the story, but
Yeah.
in terms of discussing it with random people and being like, oh, I wish I could tell you, but you need to play it. Nah, I don't really.
The question implies a zeitgeist, like, oh man, yeah, I'm the only one in my friend group that's played the Guardians of the Galaxy video game, and I can't talk to anyone about how it happens at the end. And it's like none of us are. Like, there's not even a one of us that's playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game, let alone the friction of who they're going to talk to about it.
I wish I could talk to my friends about House Flipper. They just don't see that it's actually
with
really
all the
fun.
spoilers.
There's no spoilers.
And
That's the best part. There's no spoilers. It's just no one wants to invest the time in being their own bootstraps pulling up real estate Mongol. All right, guys, you just need to get out there, buy some homes that were waterlogged, and put a whole bunch of ugly wallpaper around it and sell it to like 5
Sell them
specific
to
people.
Aquaman. Get it? 'Cause of it.
Exactly. And no, what is like? I guess I'm trying to think of like what is a game that has intensive like a walking sim, like Edith Finch. You can't just go around and like talk about that with somebody. You can't be like, hey, let me tell you the whole story. Like, oh, that's just the game though, right? Oops, my bad.
Yeah.
But besides that, there's not like a lot of games. You know, like you could talk to somebody about Assassin's
there's
Creed
the part of me
without
that
spoiling it.
periodically wants to push people to play Night in the Woods and Disco Elysium, because it's just like the only way to talk about it is if you get around to playing it. It's not even a spoilers
like
thing, because you won't give a shit about what I'm saying if you don't play it. You're like, oh yeah, a cat is angsty or something.
I think a
Cool.
better
To
play
question
Night
would
in the
be, what's a game
You
where
need to
you
play
can
Night in
talk
the Woods.
what's a game where you can talk about spoilers, but it won't actually spoil it for anybody who's never played it. Like,
Most
that
games,
would
because
be-
they don't listen when they don't know what you're talking about.
No. I mean, like
The
a
whole
game that
concept of spoilers
sounds
mostly applies to people being engaged with a thing already, and then you
True.
being ahead of them, and then they have the context for the spoiler.
That's true.
If I shout at a random person about a thing that happens to Legoshi, it's like they're like, "What the fuck? Go away!"
If you shout at random people, they tend to say that. To be fair.
Yeah, but it was a fun day when Stephanie had played through Night in the Woods, and I was like, "Oh shit, I can talk about this game with somebody. Someone else knows." And she sent me a message yesterday of Measurehead talking shit to her in Disco Elysium. I'm like, oh, she's playing Disco Elysium.
Nice.
It's a good game.
Does she finish games?
I
Or is she,
responded
like-
where it's like, man, I totally want to make a personal instrument characters just so I can kick the shit out of that guy. But then I'll be playing by his rules and tacitly endorsing his worldview. That game's so good.
Huh.
I
I still need to beat that.
You can punch Nazis and not enforce their worldview.
No, it's just a really specific thing about physical superiority. So defeating him via a fight is like endorsing his rules to begin with, to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's dick. What are
You
your guys'
can
favorite
punch
board
other-
games?
Oh.
Monopoly, because it's the only
Desperately
game
trying
that
to
I
catch
can
up on
win.
this list.
I'm
I
the
fucking
same.
hate Monopoly.
Yeah,
I'm the
that's
same.
why I win,
I
because
hate-
I'm the only one
hate-
stubborn enough to stick it around, and everyone else leaves after the 5th hour. So
Same-
the
same
true
here.
the true strat to win Monopoly is a war of attrition. Everyone else will always give up on beating Monopoly before you.
I just thought of the
do.
worst video game ever, or the worst board game ever. Like, you ever heard of like Pandemic Legacy and Risk Legacy? Monopoly Legacy.
Oh god.
Oh,
So basically America? Like what do you
Let's talk about estate taxes, motherfucker. Just kidding, there isn't one. Fuck you. Same person wins every match forever.
I recently had the experience of somebody inviting me to, I think it was to a Christmas party, and they were like, I bought Monopoly so we can play it. And I'm like, oh my god.
Like,
I
on
didn't
purpose.
obviously didn't say anything, but yeah. They don't listen to this podcast, even though I told them to.
They didn't know. How did they not know? It's Monopoly.
There's so many other games. Come on, even in Portugal. Because the thing here in Portugal is that the selection is very limited for cool board games. So it's all down to either big company has the IP and they're just the boring games, or you just have to buy it in a foreign language, either Spanish or English or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Ignoring tabletop, like D&D, my all-time favorite board game's probably Carcassonne, because it's just so fucking clean. You just go, and it's just like a really satisfying loop, and you can just play it over and over again and so on.
Yeah, it is a
Carcassonne's
pretty
good time.
It's a pretty everyone friendly game too. Like it's not a game that you're gonna, well, I guess not children, but
It's not
most
Twilight
people,
Imperium.
Yeah, it's not Twilight Imperium, obviously, but it's not like you're not going to spend 30 minutes doing the instructions. It's pretty, you can get going pretty quick.
But yeah, like Twilight Imperium, though, I enjoy in a weird abstract way where it's not necessarily always fun a lot of the time, but it's just so interesting as a game. Because yeah, it's like Civilization, but a board game, which, as you might imagine, only makes things crazier in some ways and more complicated, because you have like 6 to 8 people sitting around. Well, like less potentially, but the player caps are 6 and 8 before and after the expansion comes out. And you pick a race card from this massive deck of races that are all these intergalactic dudes that all have like entirely different abilities, and so all their ships are slightly different in stats, and they have their own capital ship and their own like spies and abilities, and it's so fucking incredibly detailed that just the list of empires that are played in that game completely changes how that game's going to play. And then like the board is a bunch of like randomized or balanced like tiles of planets and systems and so on, and you just go around and play this complicated turn structure that cycles where you're managing all these like very interestingly set up resources, and you kind of just spend every second making a bunch of like really kind of like high pressure decisions about what like risk reward things, like, do I do this, like, is that overextending myself? But like I could be like behind on resources the rest of the game if I make this move, but if I don't do it, then I'm playing too safe and I might just sit here and not accomplish anything. And every single turn you're trying to, like, there's the ever-present rule of like try to get a victory point every turn, essentially. Like, you're always trying to get one, and just to make things crazy, there's another victory point condition drawn every turn as a public objective that everyone can see, so your goals keep changing every turn, and your list of unfinished tasks to potentially try to do keeps growing. But also everybody has like 1 to 3, I think, secret objectives in their hand, because they start with 1 and they can draw more via certain resource things. And so you have a card that is a completely private objective that nobody knows you have, that is its own weird deranged action to try to perform. And it's just this big victory point race that takes like 6 to 12 hours, and it's just an all-day insanity game.
Yeah,
other than that, it's like the polar opposite. Like, it's party games. Like, it's just fun to play like Dixit, where we all argue about a clue or something, or Codenames Pictures is fucking incredible. It's so fun.
I recently played this was online though, but it was is the Dixit one the Dixit one where you give one clue, one
About
word
a picture?
rather?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
You draw a picture. In Dixit, you have a deck of cards that are all just beautiful paintings, basically big plus-sized cards. And if it's your turn, what you do is you look at your hand and you pick a card that you're going to play. You say a 1-word clue about that card and you play it face down. and then everybody else looks at their hands and they play a card from their hands based on that clue, also face down. You shuffle them and then lay them out, and everyone tries to guess which one was the one that the clue was actually pointing to in the first place. And so you get points for being right, but also you get points for stealing. You get points for other people picking yours instead of the right one too. So you get points for tricking people. And there's such complicated, beautiful cards that there's always the risk that somebody has a card that literally fits your clue better than your clue did, and you're like, oh fuck. And it's like that's the whole game. I explained the whole game basically. You can already play it, audience. That's the level of, like, I love that how pick up and play some party games are, where there's so much entertainment that comes from the dynamic of like the social interaction and the deduction and whatever, but the actual mechanic is so quickly explained that that's basically the entire thing. Like, all you gotta do is look at a placard that says what the scoring system is, and that's the whole game.
Yeah.
And like Codename Pictures is wild. You just sit at a table, two people sit at a table on opposite teams, and their team, the rest of their team is on the other side of the table from them, and so they have like a battleship style card that's standing up that says which parts of the grid are each of them. And so you're trying to get people to pick the cards that are on the grid, but all of them just have little like Dixit style complicated pictures. They're black and white pictures though, but they're like
that's
weirdly,
the mode
like,
that I played. But
yeah, they have like a
words,
weird number of things, and you have all these black and white pictures that are weirdly detailed, and it'll be like, why is it a shark that's jumping over the moon into a dish or something? And it's like there's a weird number of elements. And in that one, the only clue you can give is a one-word clue followed by a number.
So then what happened to me there is that we were behind a little. Our team was behind a little, and I was the person giving the clues. And there were 5 words at the bottom. One of them was the opposite team, and I said the clue is bottom, and the number is 4, and they didn't catch it. And then I said the clue is lower, and the number is 4, and they still didn't catch it, and I lost. we lost.
You're thinking outside the box.
Yeah,
that is a beautiful risk reward game, because you scan the board for all the pictures, and you're trying to come up with a clue that can encompass the largest number of the pictures that are on your team that you want them to pick, because they can see all the pictures, but they don't know which ones are yours. And so you try to, and so you're like, oh well, I can pick the really safe one, like fish 2, but then we only get 2, and we got to be ahead of the other team. We got to outpace them to win. It's like, oh fuck, what if I get something really metaphorical and weird? If I can get 4, like, will they get it? And how half the time,
is no.
The second you say it, they're all arguing amongst each other, and there's this pain of watching people argue a completely bizarre line of reasoning for 5 minutes straight, and the wrongest person is the most sure of themselves, and you as the clue giver are not allowed to react, make a face, or interact in any way while these people are just doing shit to the point where you want to wear a mask, basically, because it's like so agonizing. It's such an entertaining game for that reason. And like the moment you give the clue, you also might immediately realize, oh fuck, my clue describes one of the enemy cards. I just fucked us. And worst case scenario, there's essentially the 8-ball. Like there's one card that neither team wants to get their team to pick, because you instantly lose. Codename Pictures is great. I've never even played the original Codename, so I don't see a reason to bother.
Damn.
I was trying to check what the game was.
I can't imagine that game without
played.
pictures. It's so good.
It's with words, so pictures definitely makes it better. But it's an online thing. Yeah, it sounds like it. It's an online thing. It's like you can do it on a website. I imagine there might be one with pictures. Yeah, we do it in our company Friday stand up, where it's like for half an hour we're just chatting up and playing a game online. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That word means different things here. Like your company, your company stand up. I'm like, stand up comedy. Hang on a minute.
No, I think
that's a bit more extreme than the company like escape room or company karaoke. It's like company stand up. Let's go. Everyone's got to watch my routine.
I think the principle or the basic premise of the word is that people are standing up and talking. and they like meet up on that day or whatever, standing up for a little bit and just instead of like sitting down. I think that's the premise. I'm not 100% sure.
Company stand-up.
new,
It's
okay?
the scariest phrase I've ever heard.
I mean, I think some Jackbox games are like that.
Yeah. Oh no.
Like the premise of
No,
them is they gotta be, they're
Yeah, that's essentially what they make us do.
That's why I like.
Where did you get such knowledge on design of games and stuff? Your insight's extraordinary, and I'm wondering if you just come up with stuff, or do you actually learn and work in the field? Just gonna read this question. That's just a hand job for me. I played a lot of video games, and then I thought about them. The end. Also, that's it. Also, I watched I've watched interviews about games, and I've watched like essays about games. So I've engaged with other people talking about games in addition to me just thinking about games. But
that's the biggest thing.
I wanted to be a game developer, but I literally just got a few semesters into Java, and I was like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna study rocks."
Yo, guess what?
And then I didn't use any of that, and now I play video games for a living.
Games are made with Java, so
yeah. Come back at it again. You can do it with C++. That
doesn't mean
you want to.
That didn't teach me anything about game design, though.
You could do what does Unity work in? Unity's
Unity is
C.
It's Python, right? Oh, it's C. It's C# with Python.
Yeah, it's C#. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, does anyone have anything to add there? Do you have special insight on game development that informs your opinions?
Yeah, mine's just mine's based on playing too many games. I mean, I know I've watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff on making video games. I understand limitations of engines. I literally built my stream stuff in Unreal Engine. So I have experience making assets and stuff like that for Unreal. I get it. I get the annoyance of something just as mundane as like, how come this thing isn't lit in properly? And it's like, well, I don't know, man. There's like 15 fucking lights you have to set up just to get the thing to look even visible. It's not my fault I didn't point the goddamn thing at this particular item properly enough. I'm sorry. You want me to go and make another fucking light asset and then re-render the whole fucking level for you? Is that better? Fucking child. Like,
I felt kind of vindicated recently because obviously there's like some of my criticisms is just me getting stuck and then bitching about it. But then I watched is it Warren Spector, the creator of Deus Ex?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the guy?
It is.
It's in my recommended videos thing, as he did an interview for somebody for Ars Technica, and it was just like, that was literally his explanation for why Deus Ex happened, is just playing other games and being frustrated with them and like, why can't you do this? I'm gonna make a game where you can do that. Fuck it, basically. And it's like a cuddly interview of like, yes, exactly, let's go.
It comes from a very personal gripes kind of point of view. I think, like, talking personally, I wanted to, and I still want to develop my own game. But over the years, I've understood, like, I've learned what it is, what developing a video game is, and for one, it's super hard work. Whether you're by yourself or with other people, it is so much work. It's life encompassing. It's everything. If you're, it's not like, oh, I trim bushes, or I work in construction, or I'm an engineer. It doesn't matter what you do. Like, there's work that normal people do, and then there's video game development. Because you can't just develop, like, well, obviously if you're like an asset creator or a voice actor or other sort of parse and parcel sort of development, obviously you're not there for the whole thing, and you're still part of the development. But if you're like a designer, or if you're like a programmer, it's like it's your life. it's your work life specifically, obviously, but it's not a walk in the park, is what I mean to say. And I have the utmost respect for people like Concerned Ape that developed Stardew Valley and is now developing a new game. Like, it's
Stardew.
Yeah, it's like that sort of dedication is special, and I don't think most people have it, even with the best of intentions. And the other thing is, people who want to make video games, like Warren Spector, for example, it used to be more that you know, I don't think this happens
Smaller
anymore. But
teams were better.
Yeah, that's true. But that's
Let's go back to
that's
old
definitely-
graphics so we can have like 20-person teams again.
The thing is, like, I think back when I was growing up, people were like, I want to make my own game, and I'm going to be able to do all of these things. You're going to be able to shoot up the whole place. You're going to be able to drive around and fly and whatever, Kamehameha and all the things. And that was because people or kids were playing games, and they were seeing the limitation of each game, and they were thinking up, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this, and wouldn't it be cool if I could do that? And like that sort of attitude, I think, is not fostered anymore by games as much, mostly because games do a lot of stuff, and there's also so many games, but also because I think our attitude towards new games changed a little. Back then, the
mainstream popular video game is even when it tries to be open world, it's a mostly linear cinematic experience that doesn't really encourage you to like think about it much. You get a handful of basic tools and you pretty much use those to conquer the thing, and then you have a lot of like walking down hallways while holding your ear and somebody talks to you.
Yeah. And so it just sort of, I think kids grow up now with games that don't necessarily invite that sort of like, I want to make a Deus Ex. Not that Warren Spector was a kid at the time, but I mean, and like
to some extent, there's this terrifying element of like, hey, remember playing GTA and like they started having conversations in the cars on the way to your objective? Like that was kind of nice, right? Little did we know that'd become like the core gameplay of most video games.
Yeah.
Like, we're on our way to a thing and they're talking, and that's most of the game.
Or we're in an elevator and they're talking to hide a load screen, or we're in a. It's just, yeah.
So for
me,
me,
pretty cute though.
My objective of back then, when I was out of university and trying to find a job, I wanted to make a turn-based role-playing game, and I specifically was trying to make a turn-based system that played like real time, which was, I knew, a foolish thing to do, because it was. But my idea was that I wasn't going to be able to make the game by myself without support from anybody. So my idea was that I could do something and then show a publisher and be like, hey, this is a real-time game, but it really wasn't. It was turn-based in secret. And then that was my whole thing. And I had like the story thought out. I still have the story thought out, and I think the plot twist at the end is brilliant. But it's, but it's
time
fine.
to
like,
type it all into Twine.
No, it's okay. It can be in my head, and it's fine. It's all right. It's just that if life goes that way, I'll make something. But maybe when I do make it, maybe it's not even gonna have combat, and it's gonna be like a Disco Elysium game. And then, can you imagine making a Disco Elysium game? Do you see how many words that game has? Can you imagine?
It's incredible. I have so much respect for that game for existing. It's Jesus Christ. I remember being hyped for like a year just based on its art style. I just saw screenshots of it. I'm like, that looks like a really cool game. I know nothing about it. I had no fucking clue how hard it was gonna go.
I know, right?
When it came out, I was not ready for it.
Same thing for me.
Same thing with Night in the Woods, where I'm like, this is funny animal people. Let's look at them go. Some guy named Scott Benson people like, apparently, like his art. Let's go.
Nope.
Yep.
And then it was like, holy shit. Is it Scott Benson or is it the other guy? Yeah, Scott Benson is the artist. I still follow him on Twitter.
Yeah.
Every now and then he gets accused of ripping off his art style from Night in the Woods, which is really funny. It's like, you're close. You're so close to figuring it out.
I would always act defensive. Like, no, that guy stole it from me. He stole my art style.
He stole my name. Go and check it out.
He stole everything. Look at his profile. He's just a complete thief.
Yeah.
Even the link to his Twitter bios to his Twitter is the same.
You also realize that if you followed him on Twitter, then it's like, oh, nothing in that game would have surprised me. Because his Twitter's just like that all the time.
I don't think I follow him on Twitter. I
hope they make a new game sometime.
I'm
sure they're working on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably gonna take a while because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Let's see, the Glorious Society. I think Night in the Woods is like 5 years old now.
Not bad.
more, please. Not more Night in the
There's
Woods.
25-year-old games that I still need to play.
Yeah. What do you think about the eternity it took to make like the Outer Wilds? Like, I put the original trailer for proof of concept trailer for Outer Wilds in my Let's Plays playlist just so people would see it, because it's so alarming to see that game featured in like a trailer in 2012 with like Nintendo 64 graphics, and like, but all the planets are still already there, and you're like, oh shit, I can actually recognize which one's which, and they already had the ideas and they were still working on the whole idea on how to make it all work. And I'm like, that's what jeez. Like that kind of thing makes me realize why the Yick guy keeps trying to bring his game back with new revisions forever, because it's like at some point it's like, I put a decade into this fucking thing, I'm gonna make it good eventually.
Being in that situation, I can't imagine what it's like to be like, to pour your heart and soul into something and it's kind of bad. Like, if you realize that, it must be like a terrible thing. Does he realize that though, the Yeek guy?
He must realize it because he's revamping the entire game, but his original responses to criticism were not graceful at all. Very smug, like nobody gets it and stuff like that. But then here he is rewriting his entire game, so it seems a lot like he might have come to terms with some of it, but who knows? Do you think that AAA games like Battlefield 2042 have no excuse to be this so bad?
Have no excuse.
They do have an excuse. They're AAA games.
Well, that's the symptom. That's not an excuse. But yeah, the games are so bad. It's really awful and stupid that they're so bad. Because yeah, like indie games dance circles around them in many cases, not with the same production values, but like there's so many well-made projects all the time that I am perpetually just perplexed by the fact that like the biggest media companies doing the biggest things in each of their fields, like Game of Thrones on TV and Star Wars in movies and like stuff like Battlefield and Cyberpunk and a lot of stuff like that, where it's like in many cases you have an ungodly number of people to throw out a project, and you have access to the best resources in the world and the most talented people, and there's just no reason for things to turn out the way they do. Like at some point it has to be like top-down mismanagement on the highest level. Like there's just a fundamental problem in how these companies are structured, where the most powerful people just make the worst decisions and manage the entire company badly, but clearly get away with it because they hold all the power. And so it's like it completely throws away the entire idea that capitalism is this fucking meritocracy at all, because all the most powerful companies have just been shitting the bed for the last like 10 years in so many ways. You're like, but you literally have a formula to follow. And you have access to all of the talent people. You bought all of them. What the fuck are you doing? How is this such a struggle? Like, I know that video game development's hard, but they know how to do it, and they have all the people and the money and can literally just follow their own fucking blueprints, and they fuck up this bad.
But it's on
They're not
purpose.
trying to be creative.
It's working exactly as intended. It doesn't matter if the games are shit. That's the ultimate thing.
Because whenever there's consequences, none of the people that actually make money, none of the people that actually are in power face consequences for the game being bad. All the people under them that didn't make the game bad are the ones that are most likely to be fired and liquidated and thrown around and shit, and have to deal with all these life-changing things where they have to pick up and move across the country for their new job. Whereas like the Bobby Kodaks and shit, like, who gives a fuck? Like they're gonna make so much money, and then they're gonna sell their company to make more money, and even when they're losing money, they're making money. Fuck you.
Yeah. I mean that's the
Capitalism
whole appeal.
breeds innovation.
No, it doesn't. It's like, especially
Sure
in
it
video
does.
games.
Well,
It doesn't do anywhere, but especially in
regulated
video
capitalism
games.
does. It absolutely
No, it
does.
doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely it does. The problem is that if you
only innovation-
allow how do you allow innovation when you have like a company allowed to just homogenize and eat smaller developers like EA, who makes Battlefield? Like, who actually makes Battlefield is like the right question here. What team, what company is sitting there making it, because you could say EA,
Nebulous.
but like
It's
what
nebulous.
is the company that, like, what is the actual development team making that game? Because I imagined
DICE, that was once known for making games with personality, like Mirror's Edge, and then they just got all
Right.
those edges
'Cause
sanded
I
right
imagine-
off. And now
I
they're
imagine there
like,
was-
make Call of Duty the Heist or whatever it was called.
I imagined that there was probably a company at some point that was not scummy about their existence, that created good games that people enjoyed. And someone came along, scuttling their stupid fat wads of cash around, and went, huh, you're doing things that make money, and I need more of that so I could scuttle around better. And so they just went, mine. And then they went, now you're going to make whatever I say, but it's always going to be profitable because I bought you, right? And then when it's not, because it won't be, because that's not how making video games works, then it turns into all of the talent, the best that they can buy, usually vacating and leaving and going somewhere else, or losing their will to create. Thus, you have a worthless asset. It's just, yeah, your best. It's like, again, if you just stop letting people merge, it's fine if game companies just die out. It would be fine if like Rare fizzled out in the 90s and didn't come with us into the 2000s, because it's better than like Grabbed by the Ghoulies. And like that's kind of like what is the point? Like, what's the point if all you're going to get at the end of the day is, like Keith's talking about, really bad management managing companies that once made good games, whose names are going to be on the boxes of garbage products, and then you as a consumer goes, oh, that's weird, what the hell happened? I remember loving games from them. And you have to like play a math equation going like, oh, well, it was actually because someone added an addition of this company into this mix. That's what ruined the formula. Oops, the sauce is bad.
And then also every single company you've ever loved is a fucking ship of Theseus, because the top-down management has an adversarial relationship with everybody that actually works there, and pretty much they just actively bleed they actively bleed talent. Like I think it was literally my once upon a time favorite game developer, BioWare. I think they're the ones that literally gave me the term stress casualty, which is the worst thing I've heard. I hate that. I hate that whole thing. Oh my god. And like my fucking like you bet that like if it ever gets finished, the fucking script for Kingdoms of Amalur has this like, I did the whole intro about the company's history again and how weird that is, but there's stuff to dive in there about how fucked up stuff happened there, like how I mean I'm sure he's rich, it doesn't really fucking matter, but like R.A. Salvatore never got paid because they just didn't ever pay his fee, because they literally just went bankrupt, and fuck you, and all their employees get just scattered to the winds. And then as recently as last year, they finally got their final paycheck, but it was only 14% of their final paycheck, and they tried to reach them at their address that they lived at when they worked there, in an industry where people regularly move whenever they get a new job, which was all of them because they were all fired. So like none of them live there anymore, you dumb shits. What the fuck? What a token weird. I'm happy that game developers that got fired once upon a time got some money during the pandemic and so on for a thing that they should have, like, it was their wage. It's wage theft. Like it's money they were already owed, which is deeply fucked up. But have it being such a tiny insulting amount of money, and then also like them just failing to give it to them correctly because it's just like, it's what a fascinating fucking mess. And the game is sold with R.A. Salvatore on the cover as a selling point, even though he wrote none of the game. He wrote the history for the MMO that the game was retroactively made to be in the universe of, and he was never paid. Oh my god, game development's a fucking nightmare. I'm so happy I didn't follow through with being in it. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's a weird industry. But I think, I don't know. I think I think there was a heyday, and that was back when there was just a lot of game companies. Back when there just was so many of them, you would have a lot of access to really interesting, unique, good products, which is what we're seeing, like a renaissance of that now with indie developers.
It was a lot less gross when there was like 12 dudes making a game.
Yeah. There was a lot less problems. But but yeah, like I think as the tools become more efficient, and again, because there's more ease of access and more people can get into the market, then suddenly you have competition, you have good games, you have people like, I don't get it, how come I invested $500 million in making Halo Infinite, but it didn't outsell fucking some one dude's weird furry simulator? What happened here? How did I fail? And you're like, oh, well, probably because that guy had passion. And you
Furry simulator, which simulates just furry. That's it. That's the
Yeah.
whole goal.
yeah, you just like you have like the difference between what will be VR chat and like the metaverse. And you're like, that's weird. How come a thing where a bunch of copywritten characters can run around and like poop on bar stools is going to be a more lucrative and passionate project than like one of the richest companies in the world? Why? How is this so difficult? And you're like, oh,
you're- My point is that the big companies like Electronic Arts or Activision or BioWare or specifically Microsoft, I mean, they're not in the business of making games, and like that is not, that's like they're in the business of making money. Because look at what Microsoft, look how much they paid for Activision this week, or are supposed to pay whenever the deal goes through. It's 60 or it's 50 or 60 billion, right?
it's technically it's 70. They paid like 60. I think
70.
it's like 65 billion or 68 billion or something like that.
75 billion. Okay. Well,
No,
let's
it's
just
70.
think of how much money that is. That's equivalent of making 1,070 million budget video games.
Well, remember, it's also not real money.
But the thing is, they have the assets to do that. I'm not saying like they.
Well, yeah, of course they do.
They're not.
Yeah.
So why? So Microsoft has been. They didn't just come across these assets. They had them, and they have a lot more besides. They're not like emptying their bank account or their asset account. They have enormous resources, but they don't do 1,070 million games. They do 3. And one of them
they
is
publish
Anthem
a lot of games
or whatever.
They are pretty prolific
they
on
publish
publishing.
them.
They
for sure.
they make a console they make an entire console.
Mhm.
They do a lot, like, and you have to remember that like Microsoft is a hydra. It has hundreds and millions.
Yeah,
of
that's where they
heads.
get their assets from. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
so it's not like Xbox made $60 billion. It's that like Microsoft, a company that has a monopoly on operating systems, a monopoly on Office interfaces, a monopoly on like the monopolies are piling up here. And again, that's what my argument was, is that like that's the kind of stuff that stifles competition. Like you can have companies competing in a marketplace and it works fine, like the consumer gets a good product, but you have to make sure that like you're not, like no one's allowed to get too big, and like that's too big. If you can buy
the thing
like
is,
3 game
competition
studios,
doesn't happen. Competition doesn't happen in games. Like
Sure
the
does.
notion of that.
What do you mean the
It
competition
does,
doesn't
but it's
happen?
bad though. Like you shouldn't. Games shouldn't be like, it's not like a car. It's art. There's no
Well,
competition.
Well, yes,
like,
but
in the sense,
there's a limited amount of available profit, and video games come at a absurdly high monetary cost. Even if you're making
sure.
even if you're making like a Undertale, still cost way too much money to make.
But the
it made
reason
a
why,
lot,
but the reason
yeah.
why that competition, like if you release a shooter at the same time that a big AAA shooter comes out, your shooter it doesn't make any money. It's bad for you. But the reason why that works like that is precisely because the big companies can corner markets, and so the competition doesn't like. Basically what I'm trying to say is if the competition in the gaming industry at large worked the same way that console games competition used to work, when companies like Nintendo had an iron fist. I'm not defending an iron fist over the gaming industry for what it's worth, but Nintendo back then, they had an iron fist over what got published, and so the competition within the companies was ruthless, but it was assured by Nintendo. And the reason why that is because no one game, or very few one games, were allowed to grow to a point where they obscured everything else. So you had weird offshoots, and PlayStation started off the same way. PlayStation 1 has, and PlayStation 2 as well, to be fair. They have a level of sort of a lack of uniformity in their games that we don't see in the video game industry these days. And I'm saying that obviously not as a game developer, but my point is, if games were supposed to be art, if they were supposed to be like, what I'm saying is, think of movies. Movies compete with each other, right? But we don't talk about it like that because it's not the primary aspect of a movie. We don't make a movie
talk
to be
about it like that.
We do?
Yeah,
so?
absolutely. Yeah, movies are definitely a constant competition with each other. Like,
But
again, this goes back to the idea that like how much it costs
Sonic
to
beat Birds of Prey in the SJW wars.
Yeah, we have a shitty ranking of like most grossing movie of all time. Every single movie has like the biggest box office opening of all times. It beat the Spider-Man, it beat the Incredible Hulk, it beat the whatever other Disney property exists, because that's the only movies that fight amongst each other are Disney movies. But like, the idea is like every
I'm talking
form
real movies,
of,
not Disney movies.
but regardless, even if you okay, fine, you pick like, I don't know, whatever stupid
shitty
romance drama that came out last week. I'm sure there's one. You can probably pick one.
There's probably
that probably had a very underperforming box office compared to blah 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 blah. Like, that's how it's always framed, because art, there's like art, and then there's commercial products, and like art isn't.
But you see what I mean, but I understand. You're right. You're right. What you're saying is absolutely right. But there's a difference, though. It's not the same level of it's not. Video games do compete with each other in the current market, but the end result is that I'm gonna make your game but better, or I'm gonna take all of your ideas, like Slay the Spire, and I'm gonna do a rehash that can at least make some money for me. And that's what happens.
Like, my personal philosophy is art can't be bought. You cannot buy art. You can buy a product. But art is something that someone makes generally for themselves, and it's something that they maybe will share with others, but the monetization aspect changes it. It's still art. Games are still pieces of art, but it changes the dynamic of it. Like, you can look at a Renaissance painting and it was paid for, like someone paid to have that thing made, or you look at a commission, like someone commissioned art to be made. But that's still different. That's still not a product. Like, when you commission art, you, an individual, are getting something made for yourself. It's still a piece that is relevant only to you. Like, I don't know, having someone like guzzle down 25 hot dogs in an immaculate painting in hell is like going to be something that maybe you care more about than the general populace. And that's, I think, to me, what separates something from like art and a commercial product. Whereas, like, yeah, if you made, I don't know, a piece of art that's of a really popular character you like, or that everybody likes, and you sell it as fan art, like, yeah, that's a product. You're making a product now. That's to me the difference. Is like, I think I don't know. It's like, when I think of like Call of Duty, I don't think of like art. When I think of even like Outer Wilds, I don't think of art. I think of it as you're making a product that you want to sell to people. It is competing against other products in that marketplace. It has a goal to be financially successful. It is still art, because at the end of the day, you've made something that makes people feel. Yeah, it's a labor of love, and for sure, it's like, yeah, again, like, it's not. I'm not diminishing its value. I'm just saying that when you release something out to the wild, when you throw something out there, its intention is really important. Are you releasing something because you want to change how people view something? Are you releasing something because you want to make a statement or something like that? Or are you releasing something because you want to get paid? And that's like, when you look at a game like Battlefield, it's released because they want to get paid. No one like woke up at EA and was like, fuck man, I am super passionate about making Battlefield 2044. I need this game so bad in my life. They said, look, I really want to buy my daughter a Maserati, and I cannot do that and also still pay for my yacht payments this month. So we need like
By which she
maybe a new
means apes.
battlefield. Yeah. I need you to buy like 6 of these monkeys, but like
Yeah. All right, we got to wrap up soon, I think.
but yeah.
Got through a whole bunch of questions. Man, YouTube showing you your stream stats is depressing. I normally can't.
What?
I normally don't
What, like
see them
the real-time stats
as much. Yeah, I normally don't look at them because I'm playing a video game, but I'm just
They're not
staring
very
at this
active.
thing, and I'm like, oh, stop, Jesus. There's always the weird stat about like you got 1 billion playbacks, but only 20 people are watching, and then it's like the average watch time is 3 minutes, and it's like you would stream for 3 hours, and the average watch time is 3 minutes. Everyone just pops in for a second. But I've banned like 10 bots today. And I'm like, how many, like legit, like how many of the playbacks, I wonder, that spam and then drive down the average watch time are just random weird bots that are just coming in to try to spam a random comment and leave. Like, I wonder what percentage of online traffic isn't even people. Like I'm accidentally introducing a topic. Whoops.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to get into it. That's what I was about to just mention, was that the bots are really what drives down those stats, and the stats become worthless because of it. But yeah.
And they'll do nothing about it. And
it's funny because it's only a problem on YouTube, so it sounds like maybe YouTube just isn't doing their fucking job.
Yeah,
it's true.
The current bot, there's always a current bot trend of just like one type of comment that just happens too much, and then YouTube. And then, of course, this is the type of thing that YouTube's fucking dashboard would be like, hey, man, not performing like you used to. We should feel bad about that. We have the power to fix that because we're the algorithm, but you should feel bad. Please read this dashboard about all the way you're underperforming in ways that you can't control.
Yeah.
It's not like you made less content this month, which could be its own level of toxic, but it's like, no, your content just didn't perform as well. And it's like, yeah, I wonder who controls that, buddy.
Yeah.
But anyway, good night, everybody. We answered a whole bunch of questions. If you want to answer a question, if you want to send in a question, you send it to dialogchoiceandpodcast@gmail.com, spelled the way that the show is. If you type it wrong, we're not going to get it. I think we have like 2 emails to get to still, basically.
That's true.
But look at all these questions we didn't answer. Take some of these, steal them
One
right
is that
now.
one I chipped at. That was I'm not. especially since a decent number of them I skipped on purpose.
Wow.
One of the emails is still that one that has like 20 questions in it. I don't remember where we left off. I might just move. You know what? I'm just gonna put it in the answered. I'm putting it in the answered folder. It's
we gotta
gone
finish
now.
it. We gotta finish it.
We got through most of them. He can email us again if he has questions.
Make 50 more questions. Email us back.
The end.
Brutal.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.